As a sports fan, this is the best time of year. You've got playoff baseball happening. The CFL is in the home stretch. The NFL season is nicely underway. You're starting to figure out who's for real and who isn't. And hockey season is upon us. You've got the SJ, you've got the Dub, and the NHL is firing up. We're going to cover that and a whole bunch more in today's edition of the all-new SportsCage. I'm Chris Masrick, along with the voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Dave Thomas. Thanks for being part of the show today. If you're listening on 620 CKRM or you're watching on our video stream at sportscage.com, feel free to jump in at any time. You can text us at 306-9362-62 on the Capital Ford Lincoln text line. In minutes, we're going to be joined by Pat Steinberg, who covers the Calgary Flames for Sportsnet. We're going to get his take on what Flames fans can expect in a rebuild year. Are they going to pop off and maybe surprise people, or is it going to be doom and gloom and hashtag YYC? And our poll question today, what is the best hockey movie of all time? Your choices, Dave. Youngblood, Slapshot, Miracle, Mighty Ducks, or Mystery Alaska. You can vote now at sportscage.com. Pat Steinberg, we're going to start with you. Best hockey movie of all time. You can only pick one. Which one is it going to be?
Can I add a write-in, or does it have to be one of those five?
What's a write-in? What did our crack staff miss here? What hockey movie did we miss?
Well, I don't think you're giving enough credit to D2, the Mighty Ducks, which is my all-time, like the junior Goodwill games. And we get to see the first ever lassoing penalty in hockey history. And I think the D2, the Mighty Ducks, when they actually wear the Anaheim Mighty Ducks jerseys, they change jerseys like between the second and third periods, and we get the introduction of the Bash Brothers. I feel like the first Mighty Ducks movie was great, but it was perfected by the second one. So that would be my only write-in. If I have to choose one of the five, though, I would go Mighty Ducks, based only on my vintage.
Now, listen, any movie with Emilio Estevez in it is great. Like whether it's D1, D2, or how you want to play it. Okay, all right. We'll get into this later. I'm going Slapshot. Dave, off the top, and we'll get into the why in a little bit. Just for you, when it comes to hockey movies, Dave, where are we at?
I'll preface this. When was the last time you watched the movie Slapshot?
Just the other night, it was on Turner Classic Movies, and it was right around the Hanrahan wife situation in there.
Gotcha.
And yeah.
Let's just say that when you sit down to watch it with your 7-year-old, it probably isn't the best idea because there's a lot of things I forgot that were in that movie.
Yeah. What a movie it was.
Exactly, right?
No,
moving right along. Nothing to see here. Move
on. Pat, tonight you've got work to do. The Calgary Flames are going to kick off their regular season against the Vancouver Canucks. And Craig Conroy, since he's taken over, has got a lot of praise from people for what he's done. He's finally been the guy to say, hey, you know what? Are you guys calling it a rebuild or a refresh? What's the official term? Because to me, Craig's taken it down to the studs and he's building it back up.
Yeah, I mean, the Flames are very reticent guys to use the term rebuild, and it's not a word they like using. I think that it's the nomenclature, like what you call it, is so silly to me. Like, is it a rebuild? Is it a retool? Is it a refurbish? Is it a reload? Like, I don't know. And I say it's silly because there does seem to be, there always has been, like we're talking more than a decade now, guys, where the organization doesn't like the word rebuild because for them, I think it signifies something that they're not doing. And they would like to use another term which they feel is a little bit more, representative of what they are doing. The fact of the matter is, whatever you want to call it, they're going in a different direction, and they're going in a direction that they haven't gone in a long time, and that is where they are making a concerted effort to be younger, where they are giving youth an opportunity to play meaningful minutes more than they have been able to in the last number of years, where maybe they're not focused so much just on making the playoffs right now and being the very most competitive they can be, in the, right immediacy and right what's in front of you. There is a little bit more of a plan here. There is a little bit more of a vision here. And that's not even to criticize the last decade or so where under Brad Treliving, they were very much focused on winning now. And whether it be trading for Dougie Hamilton or Travis Hamonic or any number, the Matthew Tkachuk trade that brought back Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar, these moves were all made with an eye on being and staying competitive in the immediacy. And while the Flames aren't conceding that they are okay with being a 31st or 32nd place team, which I don't think they're going to be, they're not saying that they are okay with losing a lot or being poor. What they are saying is that everything isn't focused on right now, and there is a bigger picture. And honestly, guys, this year is the first year where that bigger picture, I feel, is actually going to start being realized, because there was so much other stuff to focus on last year with Conroy as GM. He had all those pending UFAs he had to figure out what was going to happen with. And there was a lot of house cleaning left over from the prior regime that he had to take care of before getting to his vision, which is now what we're talking about, and now which I think is being realized. So they're trying to go younger. They're focused on 2-3 years down the road. Guys, I think that the best or the worst kept secret in this city, in this market, is that with Scotia Place, the replacement for the Scotiabank Saddledome opening in 2027, the fall of 2027, they'd like to be ready to compete at a high level then. They'd like that to be kind of the start of maybe them knocking on the door to winning multiple playoff rounds and being a factor in the Western Conference more than just fighting for a bubble playoff spot on a regular basis. So that's kind of what we're talking about right now. And in a lot of ways, it starts tonight, and they've got a 19-year-old making his NHL debut, a first-round pick in 2023, making his NHL debut tonight in Sam Honzek. So, yes, there's still some veterans on this team, and they don't want to be the worst team in the league this year, but they remain committed to giving young players in the organization an opportunity at the highest level.
You took the words right out of my mouth when you mentioned focus and long-term and that building all in the same paragraph.
Yeah.
So would that building have, or does it afford the Calgary Flames patience from their fans in the fact that, hey, we got this thing coming, it's going to come, and we're going to be right there? So does that buy them a little extra time that maybe other franchises wouldn't have?
I think in some in some corners of this group of fans, I think that's probably true. It's funny because there's a very, very vocal group of fans that it didn't matter if they were going to be playing in the Saddledome in perpetuity until the roof fell down, and there was no building that is under construction in this market, that people have been clamoring for a different direction and a younger direction for years, and so this new direction would have been embraced by, I think, a rather large faction of fans in this city, regardless of there being a new building. But there is a little bit of a dichotomy where there is a group of fans and a lot of season ticket holders, a lot of people who maybe aren't as vocal or aren't calling into our post-game show or aren't making their opinions as widely known on Twitter or our text line or whatever, who do want the team to be competitive and don't feel like they want to sit through a 5-6 year long rebuild. And I think for that group, which is, I think, an important group to remember as well, I think for that group, having the new building coming and having somewhat of a pretty clear path to wanting to be a competitive group and a team that maybe can fight for real meaningful things when it opens, I think that might buy them some patience from that group, which I think is a really good point, and an important one to remember, because I think in the end, everybody who cheers for this team in this market would like to see them win a Stanley Cup or would like to see them compete for a Stanley Cup, but there are differing opinions of how to get there. There are differing opinions of how much people want to spend their hard-earned money on a direction that may or may not take them there. So I do think, and I don't know what the cross section is or how large each group of fans is, but I do think for that group that still wants the team to be competitive and still wants to go to games and be entertained and see the team win games and maybe get some playoff hockey, I think having that kind of tangible end goal is really going to help if they are a little less competitive for a year or two here.
We're talking NHL hockey on the Western Pizza Guest Hotline with Pat Steinberg, who's the host of Flames Hockey on Sportsnet 960 The Fan in Calgary. Okay, outside of Sam Honzek, who in training camp impressed you the most this year?
Well, I think Honzek is by far the biggest story. It's kind of him and everybody else. But I also, the thing that I would point to immediately, guys, is their goaltending. And the goaltending situation is probably the most unclear it's been in this market for quite a while. Because, yes, they've had the last number of years with Jacob Markstrom as their number one, and with Jacob as the number one, you just knew who was getting the opening night start. You knew who was getting certain games, and it was all about resting Jacob. And when other goalies, Dan Vladar or David Riddick or Dustin Wolf, would go in, it was all about spelling off Jacob. Well, now it's a little bit different. Now that's not what we're talking about. And even going back before that, when Mike Smith was here or Brian Elliott was here, I mean, there was always a pretty clear idea of who the desired top of the depth chart would be. Well, this year, there's none of that. Because with Dustin Wolf, a seventh-round pick in 2019, it was kind of one of the really important pieces for this team's rebuild or retool or whatever we're calling it. He's now in the NHL, and a lot of people are excited about him. Dan Vladar had hip surgery in March and specifically was shut down for the rest of last season so he would be ready for training camp and be ready to start the season. And he's going to get the night one start tonight in Vancouver. And then you've got a free agent signing who really impressed in training camp in Devin Cooley, who's going to start the year with the American League's Calgary Wranglers, but is a guy that is very much factored into this team's future as well, and a guy that they have not forgotten about. So all three of those goaltenders played really well in training camp, and there was very, very little separation between the three of them. And in even-ish workloads, all of them got a pretty decent workload in the 8 preseason games they played. So Vladar's going to get the start in night one or on night one. I think that's as much about his residency here in Calgary and being somewhat of the incumbent, but Dustin Wolf is going to start one of the 2 games they play on the weekend, and then it kind of goes from there. And so the fact that goaltending was such a question mark, a massive question mark coming into camp, and to see all 3 guys perform as well as they did and have some really good moments and inspire a lot of confidence in a lot of Flames fans, that would probably be the next kind of most impressive area after Honzek. But honestly, Sam Honzek's camp was so surprising and so out of nowhere and so impressive. It has to be the number one with a bullet.
I would submit that when rebuilding a roster, one of the most important factors as far as moving forward, and I'm not considering player development or scouting, is salary cap management. And if you look at the Calgary Flames, I would suggest that Craig Conroy has done a terrific job in that. But if you are in a rebuild and the right offer comes, you have to listen. So would you anticipate, and I get it, we haven't even played a game of the 82-game schedule yet, but if you had to look into your crystal ball, would you suggest that if the right offer came along, that perhaps Nazem Kadri or even a Jonathan Huberdeau would not finish the season in Calgary?
I think they have 6 names that are kind of part of this kind of veteran remaining core. After Tanev, after Hanifin, after Markstrom, after Zadorov, after Lindholm, even Mangiapane have all been moved out since January of last year or so. They kind of have a remaining 6. And the 2 that you mentioned right there in Kadri and Huberdeau are 2 of them. You also throw in Michael Backlund, the captain, Rasmus Anderson, Mackenzie Weegar, and Blake Coleman. Those are kind of the 6 core veterans that this team has. And so with those 6, I think outside of probably Backlund, I think that they're, just because he's the captain and has kind of made it known he would like to be on this team maybe for the remainder of his career. I honestly think if an offer came along that made sense for the team, they would seriously consider it. I don't think Craig Conroy is going around actively shopping these guys. I don't think he's banging down the door saying, hey, take Nazem Kadri, or, would you like to have Blake Coleman, a 2-time Stanley Cup winner, on your team? I don't think it's that. But I think as we move closer to the trade deadline and teams are looking to bulk up and calls start being made, if somebody's like, hey, we see Nazem Kadri with, it'll be after this year, 4 years left on his deal after this season, we think he could really help shore up our center ice position and push us over the top for a Stanley Cup run. We're willing to give up, player and pick X and a little bit more if you eat half of his salary going forward. Well, I think absolutely that the Flames look at that, and they heavily consider that. So I do think that is very much a possibility as we move forward here. And I don't think that they are advertising that right now because they feel that these veterans are going to be really important as this season gets going to help build a new culture and build a new standard inside the locker room. Like, that is a really important thing that this organization wants to instill starting this season now that there's so much less uncertainty than there was last year. But yeah, I think that if that were to start to become a reality, and if all of a sudden there started to become interest in any of those names closer to the new year, into the new year, and closer to the deadline, I don't think they would hesitate. I really don't. Huberdeau's the hardest one, just because it's been such an absolute. I hate saying this, but the first 2 years of Huberdeau in Calgary, it's been a disaster. He's in 2 seasons, he has less than he had in his final season in Florida when he had 115. I think he's at 107 combined the first 2 seasons. It just has not worked out anywhere close to what the Flames were expecting for the highest paid player in franchise history. And I just, with the amount of time left on his deal and the amount of money owed on it, that one just seems the hardest to move. Some of the other ones, I think you could be able to move and get assets on. You wouldn't have to be kind of sweetening it or taking lesser return or, quarters on the dollar just to move the salary cap space out or to move that salary out. And the last thing I'd say, guys, is that they have got so much cap room right now. The Flames have got a ridiculous amount of cap room that, that type of thing barely enters into their decision-making factors right now because they're just loaded with cap space. They're barely at the cap floor as they start the regular season. But yeah, it's a long answer. I do think that they would very much consider moves like that, especially as we move closer to the deadline.
It's funny you mentioned Jonathan Huberdeau. The other night I was watching Matthew Tkachuk open his Stanley Cup ring on Twitter, and I was like, uh-oh. I hope JH isn't watching. This may be a little depressing because those are some of your former teammates celebrating the ultimate goal in hockey, and you were not part of it. All right, we'll wrap on this because you watch more intently than anybody else. Vegas has penciled in the Edmonton Oilers to be in the Cup final or win the Cup. They're the odds-on favorites. What's the chink in their armor? Where do you see a deficiency in them? Because they got a lot of things going right, but where are their vulnerabilities this year with Oiler hockey?
With the Oilers? I think the number one thing that I see in terms of a vulnerability for Edmonton is I still don't love their blue line. That being said, I didn't love their blue line last year, and they were 2 shots away from winning the Stanley Cup in Game 7, right? But I still look at that blue line and say they could add to that. And, are there still question marks about Stuart Skinner as the number one goaltender? I guess there are. But again, this team came back from an 0-3 deficit to the aforementioned Panthers and almost beat them and pulled off one of the greatest comebacks in the history of the sport with almost an identical roster. Now, they don't have Holloway anymore. The Broberg one, to me, hurts more. And, the Emberson... the Emberson player they brought back in the Cody Ceci Sharks deal, I know they're high on him. Jury's still out for me. They signed Dermott off of a PTO, who is a nice depth piece, but I still think that their biggest issue is going to be a blue line that is just kind of okay. And Matthias Ekholm has been such a great fit for them, but he's 34 years old. So at what point does Ekholm maybe start to take a step back? If it's not this year, then they're probably still fine, and I do expect Edmonton to add on their blue line between now and the trade deadline. And with that forward group and with the two guys that lead the way in 97 and 29, like, I do think that they're a shoo-in to make the playoffs. They're a shoo-in to probably be 1 or 2 in the Pacific Division. And it's all about what Stan Bowman as the GM does to try to get them over that hump. And I mean, how many times do we talk about it? You get to Game 7 of a Cup final, you're a couple shots away. Like, how do you make moves to win that one extra period and to eventually get you a championship? It doesn't really work that way, and so you can't think that way. And it's all about just making the team as good as possible so they can go on another 16-win run. But I guess the area of weakness would be, their blue line I still don't love. But I think with the talent that they have assembled, the elite players they have at forward, I still don't really worry about the Oilers. And I'm not going to worry about them until we get out to the trade deadline and we know exactly what that roster is going to look like. I do expect them to add, and thus they're probably just going to be just fine as they go into the playoffs, and they should be, as much as it pains us to say it in this city, they should be one of the 2 or 3 odds-on Cup favorites for this year, because they really have put together a good team.
I think they just need to dig in. They just need to dig in right now.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, I give Connor credit, because I never thought that he had that type of emotion in him.
Well, okay, but here's the thing. I'm not a big Oiler guy or a Connor McDavid guy, but after I saw him crying in that Amazon clip, like, the tears were just like a waterfall. I'm like, I kind of like this guy. He's not a robot, because, you know, he's been so good for so long, and stock answers in media, like, he was messed up, and I'm like, dude, now I'm kind of on your side, man. Like, yeah, dig in. Not good enough.
Not us.
Dig in.
In this market, no, I'll tell you this much, boys. Nobody in this market was shedding tears to see him shedding tears. How's that?
Well played.
Well, he's on the Western Pizza guest hotline. He's Pat Steinberg. He covers the Calgary Flames for Sportsnet 960 in Calgary. You can find him at 960 Steinberg. As always, we appreciate the time. We're going to have to do a check-in, because who knows? What if these Calgary Flames, like your D2 Mighty Ducks, take off and surprise that NHL's West Division? We're going to take a break, and still to come on the show after 4, we're going to talk to Lieutenant Eric. He's been on the show before. He's part of Edmonton Sports Talk. We're going to get his take on the Oilers, but then also some weirdness coming out of Elk camp this week, where they were being coy about their quarterback, and now Trey Ford is starting and McLeod Bethel-Thompson isn't even dressing for the game. The weirdness of the Elks continues. We'll get to that. It's the all-new Sports Cage on 620 CKRM. The show is brought to you by the Rider Foundation 50-50. This week, the Riders are taking on the Lions. It's the Plaza of Honor weekend, and they've got another great early bird prize to give away. It's a Viva Las Vegas giveaway. Prize includes flights, 3 nights up at the Vidara Hotel, and limo transfers to and from Harry Reid International Airport, or you could take $3,600 cash. The ticket deadline is tomorrow at 5. Dave, when's the last time you've been to Vegas?
Really? I've never been. I'm one of the few Saskatchewanians that have never been to Vegas.
You're the second person in about 2 months that I've talked to that has never, ever been to Las Vegas, and you're, you know, in your 40s and stuff. It's funny. People either you've been 20 times or you've never been at all. It's kind of one or the other. Colson, have you ever been to Vegas? Or if you have, when was the last time you were there?
He just left.
Yeah, he's just on his way. He's taking a flight to Vegas. No, he's answering the door.
Left. He was just dying to go to Vegas, ready to go.
Curtis, Vegas, any good memories? Anything you want to share? Anything that's legal to share on the radio on a public sports show like this?
I haven't been in quite some time. My grandparents had a place kind of like 2 hours south of Vegas in like Bullhead City, so I used to go there all the time in the winter when they were for like holidays and stuff like that.
South of Vegas.
So
wow.
Yeah,
It's funny.
I don't have any crazy Vegas stories because I was too young for it.
He was in diapers
and here's the thing. I remember the first time we went, it was in 1978. I was 5 because we drove from Saskatoon to Disneyland and in a station wagon, and there were 6 of us because that's what you did. My wife, when I tell her that story, she's like, "You what?" But she grew up in a different era, different area code, different financial bracket. Like that's what you did. And I remember we drove and we stayed at Circus Circus. Now that's when Circus Circus was nice. Now if you stayed at Circus Circus, you wouldn't tell anybody that because they would judge you for the poor choices you're making in Vegas. But it's changed a lot ever since the pandemic. There's a lot of stuff that's closed down and the prices are kind of through the roof. So if you can win this trip, this 3-night trip at the Vdara, because just go online to Expedia and see what 3 nights of Vdara cost you. It's a nice place. We're talking like $600-700 a night. And riders 5050.ca. It's funny, if you've been on social media in the past 24 hours, one of the biggest things you've probably seen in all your feeds, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, is last night they imploded the Tropicana Hotel. Curtis, if you're watching the stream, so here it is. So there's 2 towers to the Trop. So there goes the first one.
Yeah. With a big drone show overhead, right?
Yeah, of course, it's Vegas. You have to have it. And there's the second tower. If you haven't seen this yet, we have it posted on our SportsCage socials, and you can watch it. So the reason why they imploded the Trop is that's where they're building the baseball stadium that the Oakland A's or whatever they're going to be, the Las Vegas A's or whatever they're going to be called, are eventually moving into. And Vegas is famous for its hotels and then imploding them. So last night, like they had streets blocked off, they had viewing parties, they had other hotels like with views of that charging upwards of $2,000 for the night for the room, just so you could get a good view. So you could put that on social media. I don't know, Dave, are you more inclined to go to Vegas now because you're a bit of a baseball fan that you could go see a baseball game there?
Oh, yeah. Baseball game, NFL game, NHL game. Absolutely. I'm more intrigued and excited to go. I've got questions, though, about this implosion. So
yes,
the drone footage was fantastic. The drone show that they put on where they put the A's and a baseball over top of the hotel when they were blowing it up. The idea that they do it at night for the massive fireworks show that was on, I'm guessing that's why they do it. But my question, is that the only reason they did this at night? Number one. And number two, have you been around something that's exploded or been imploded before? Like, we were in Saskatoon when they actually brought down the old traffic bridge. There's a new one that's built, and so what they did for a couple of the spans was they blew them up, which is pretty cool, especially for a guy that likes fire and pyro stuff. So, but the shock that you got from that, and again, this was apparently like a small scale explosion, was something else. I could only imagine what you would feel in those shock waves coming at you from an imploded building that was that big in Vegas.
Well, what I thought I read when we were there in August, I was reading the newspaper one day, the Las Vegas Review-Journal, that the reason why they imploded it is because of all the asbestos, and they didn't want workers directly in contact with it because now that it's imploded, they can pick it up with machinery. Although workers had to go in there to dismantle it to the point where you could implode it. So I was like, I don't get the logic. And then also too, I think with the implosion part, it's just a lot faster than trying to knock it down floor by floor by floor. If anybody is listening to the all new Sports Cage that is actually in construction or an engineer and can just prove that our theories here are bunk, to be like, guys, here is the real truth as to why, please jump in here. And the other thing too is, if I've been to Vegas enough times, and depending on your state of mind, there could be buildings blowing up all around you. You may not even notice just because of whatever you've got going on in your life at that moment, wandering in and out of the casino. If you're walking around with a 72-ounce Miller Lite football around your neck with a giant straw because you're a hack Raiders fan even before they move there.
Wow.
Yeah. So now, and it's so funny when you see, well, you're like, how are they going to put because you look at Mosaic Stadium and then all of the stuff around it. And if you've driven the Strip in Vegas, you're like, how are they going to neatly put a baseball stadium in there on like a couple of blocks and then have parking? But if you go right across the street and a little south, they did it with a hockey rink called T-Mobile Arena, where they neatly tucked it in behind New York, and there's this little promenade walkway, and there's places to park, and then not further down is the football stadium. So if anybody can do it, they can. And it's funny you mentioned football. When we were there, it was the Raiders-Niners preseason game. Besides all the idiots that got into fights that night, because there were people came out when we got back to the hotel, people were looking beat up. It was $85 a person to ride a bus to go from the hotel to Allegiant Stadium. I want to say it's Mark Davis, right? It's not Al, but it's well, they know how to make money.
Right now, there's people that are listening or streaming or whatever they're doing in and around Saskatoon that are shaking their fists right now, saying, "We don't need a downtown arena because there's nowhere to park." Heard that all.
But somehow they find parking. And yeah, so and it's funny. I think I just saw a picture pop up. It's amazing. And we'll post that as well. Of what the site looks like today, like how much they've already got cleaned up, and now they're going to be able to get running. But I think I read somewhere that the A's aren't scheduled to move in there until 2028. So they're going to be playing. Is it
Sacramento?
Is Sacramento?
Sacramento.
And I can't imagine what the attendance is going to be. Not that these billionaire owners care, because eventually once they get to Vegas, that's when they're going to be able to really cash in. But I don't know what the baseball scene is like in Sacramento, but.
Well, they're not playing in the former home of the gold miners. I'll tell you that. I know that off the top of my head.
Speaking of baseball, there's action underway here. Top of the 7th, the Detroit Tigers leading the Cleveland Guardians 3-0.
Ooh.
Wow. To me, the baseball regular season is way too long. But now once the playoffs are here, I get invested again as a baseball fan.
See, I've learned that I'm more of a Blue Jays fan than I am a baseball fan because I can't watch. I used to be able to watch 3 games back to back to back, but now it's just like, oh, you're right. It's too much through the course of the regular season. And now that they've expanded the playoffs, they've removed some of the intensity for me.
And the other thing, too, is just because they make things interesting, it's like Tiger Woods when he was good in golf. When Tiger was in, it was interesting. The New York Yankees should automatically get a berth into the playoffs every year just to make it interesting.
No.
The Yankees are playing the Kansas City Chiefs or the Kansas City Royals.
No.
First pitch is 5:08. What do you mean no?
Hard no on that one.
206. What did Arash say yesterday? 263 million on payroll up against 88 million. They automatically should just be able to buy their way in because it's the Yankees. I know they try every year.
Yep.
To make it interesting. All right. And then you also have San Diego and LA. And it's funny. I know there's a lot of Dodger fans out there and they try and buy their way into the World Series every year. I don't think it's going to happen because San Diego is playing good ball at the right time. And did you see that Teoscar Hernandez home run last night?
Yes.
Wow. And he was a Blue Jay. And they traded him for, would you say virtually nothing, Dave? Because you're a Blue Jay guy. Was that they didn't necessarily hit the jackpot?
Eric Swanson was good for a year. He was good for a year. But this year, it wasn't so good. No. But, yeah, short term, it worked out. Long term, it certainly hasn't.
All right. The Saskatchewan Roughriders were back on the practice field today as they're getting ready for the big clash on Saturday against the BC Lions with a home playoff date on the line. And when we come back, we've got Trevor Harris, we've got AJ Ouellette, we've got their thoughts. And you're like, AJ, yes, Mr. Ouellette has been given his helmet back by the training staff, and he was out there. We're going to take a quick break on the all-new Sports Cage, and we'll come back and we'll get the latest from Saskatchewan Rough Rider practice on the home of the Riders, 620 CKRM. Our poll question today, if you go to sportscage.com, what is the best hockey movie of all time? Your choices. Sorry, Pat Steinberg, but we're only going with 5. I know you wanted 6, but we're going with 5. You've got Youngblood. Now that's a young Rob Lowe shot in Canada. Underrated. I know Barney was talking about it the other day. I hadn't seen it in probably 20 years, and I saw it again about 6 months ago. I'm like, this is actually better than I remember. Because you also not only have a young Rob Lowe, but you've also got a youngish Patrick Swayze, who's the seasoned vet who's showing young blood the way. Don't mess around with the coach's daughter. You've got Slapshot. Of course, that's going to be on the list. Miracle, the 1980 U.S. Olympic team. I mean, that right there.
Yeah, that was a good one.
The Mighty Ducks. I had to put that in there because I was trying to make 5, which... and then there's... And remember this? Mystery Alaska. Remember that?
I don't remember that one. I had to go ahead and look for the trailer, actually. I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Gladiator, Russell Crowe. Trust me, by the time you get to 5 hockey movies, you're kind of, the pickings are slim.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
Choose from. You can vote at sportscage.com. Saturday is a Saskatchewan Roughrider game day. They're back home to take on the BC Lions in the Plaza of Honor game. Up for grabs is a home playoff date. And the Saskatchewan Roughriders coming in on a 3-game winning streak. Life is good in Rider Nation. They're going to be inducting Darian Durant and Roy Shivers into the Plaza of Honor tomorrow night. Your lovely host is going to be Dave Thomas. How are we feeling, Dave? Are you working on material? Are you allowed, is there like 100% script you follow? Are you allowed to Dave Thomas freewheel? Like, where are we going to be at tomorrow night as far as entertainment factor goes on the Dave Thomas portion?
I'm hoping not to wreck anything personally, but yeah, no, we've got a few things up our sleeves. We've got a lovely and talented co-host in Britt Dort from TSN, so that is going to make the show, right? The pressure is on her to perform. I just need to be there and get people on and off the stage, essentially.
We're excited for our guy Doubles. And if you haven't seen, Darian and Roy will be signing autographs at the Rider store on Friday night, I believe, from 6 until 7:30. And then they're going to be signing autographs before the game, I believe, at Party in the Park after 2 o'clock on Saturday. So there's a couple of chances to come out, and whether it's just you want something signed or you just want to come and say hi, pictures, or whatever that is. I know the lineup for Darian at dinner with Doubles at Casino Regina on Labor Day weekend. It was a solid hour long, and there was only like 300 and some people there. So I can only imagine what the crowds are going to be like for him this weekend. I would say if you're coming, just be patient. He's an awesome guy, and the good thing about him is he spends as much time as needed, so you feel like you're coming away with, wow. You can walk away like, him and we're kind of friends now. We're kind of buds, which I can only imagine some of what people are going to be able to do. And speaking of nervous, I wonder if he's got his speech done.
I wouldn't doubt that I don't think he's going to pull many audibles at the end, but he'll have a script. He's an offensive guy. He'll know what he's doing.
I know. He's got to run some plays.
Yeah.
So the Saskatchewan Roughrider practice report came out, and for us civilians that don't go to practice every day like Dave, and we got a chance to see the things you don't want to see on this practice report email is DNP, which stands for did not practice. Adam O'Clair, Habakkuk Baldonado, Sean Bain Jr., which we know, Amari Henderson, Blake Corte Moore. But Arquel Armstead, it said limited. What was he, or what wasn't he doing at practice today?
Well, to me, he looked like he was taking part in most drills, but they kind of held him out of a few of the team things that they were doing a little bit later on. Now, those reps definitely went to AJ Ouellette, so to me, everything's trending in the right direction for him to go this weekend. So that was what we didn't see from Raquel. The Adam O'Clair, he was there. He was around the practice field a little bit today, but didn't have a jersey on or a helmet on, so the good news is that he was around. The bad news is that he wasn't on the field, so that's going to have to adjust the ratio as, again, he was starting at a linebacker spot. Also, the other thing that I thought was interesting was Amari Henderson also wasn't around the practice field today as he was out with an injury or illness, pardon me. CJ Rivas, though, who had the day off yesterday, was back on the field, so that was a good sign as well.
One of the brightest signs coming from rider practice in the past couple of days that AJ Ouellette was back in uniform and back practicing. If it were up to him, he would have been out there long ago, but now he's got clearance from the medical staff. And our Dave Thomas got a chance to catch up with AJ on the practice field.
AJ, how are you feeling back out on the field with your teammates?
Yeah, I felt good, felt smooth, felt like
I never left. Being with the guys all throughout the last 6 games, trying to tell them what I'm seeing and all that, it just kind of filtered in, felt good.
What was it like watching the team, first of all, getting into that 7-game winless streak, but maybe more so coming out of it?
I mean, it was good. The team, we never, started pointing fingers, never started blaming people. It was just next game, do your job. It'll start clicking once it clicks, and we got a dang good team right now, and everybody's meshing.
Well, with the win in Edmonton last week, you clinch a playoff spot. Can you be satisfied with that?
No. We have not been playing good enough, long enough. So we gotta keep that momentum going.
Aside from today, it's been starting to get cooler and feel a lot more like October. Would that then be the best time to be a running back?
Yeah, I mean it's playoff energy, and that running backs feed off of that. And then when the chill's in the air, it just hurts a little bit more to tackle someone. So we take pride in playoff football. And this team, I think from Coach Mace, J.O., and our whole coaching staff is built on back into the season when it gets cold. So it's going to be fun.
Tell me a little bit more about the running back room. Of course, Frankie Hickson played last week. Raquel Armstead is around. You've got Thomas Bertrand-Houdon, Thomas the Train. Tell me about this running back room.
We got dogs. Start anywhere. It sucks that there's only one running back on the field at a time. To me, it's the best position in football. So there should be like 1,000 of us out there, but hey, it is what it is. But it doesn't matter who's out there; they're gonna get the job done.
Why would you then say that running back is the best position in football?
I mean, you got to block like an O-lineman, you got to catch like a receiver, you got to run the ball with the most physicality and finesse on the team. You got to be smart enough to stand back there beside the quarterback and see what the defense is doing, and keep the moneymaker back there upright.
With your experience, how do you ramp things up as you head towards the postseason?
We're getting back into the season, so mistakes aren't acceptable anymore. You're not just messing up your job, you're messing up someone else's job. So we just got to lock in, and I think the team knows that there's no more mistakes.
So during your time observing this team and not being able to play, what did you learn about the team, and maybe what did you learn about your teammates?
Just watching. We got tough guys. They're going to fly down the field in special teams. They're going to put their body on the line when they have the ball. Even our defense, they are the most physical group I've seen, and I'm just excited to be back out there with them.
So what is most important to get you ready to be available to come back and play?
Just kind of communication without communicating. So I need to be able to know what the O-line's thinking. It's almost a brand new group from when I started. So trying to get a feel for how they're seeing stuff, spending extra time in the film room with them, having dinner at Furlands to try to get a little extra talk about football.
You've been down this road before, albeit in double blue of the Toronto Argonauts. Last year didn't end the way that you wanted to in the East Final. What have you learned from that you can take forward with this group?
Yeah, just got to know that you got to keep everybody accountable. Doesn't matter who they are in the room. They could be the best player in the league. You got to keep them accountable for every day they come into the facility, because you never know when someone's going to have that off game.
That's Saskatchewan Rough Rider, AJ Ouellette. And don't forget that Saturday is game day here on 620 CKRM. The Croft Electric Countdown to Kickoff with Justin Dunk and Wes Cates will start at 2. Rider Nation pregame show with Dave, Luke, and Justin goes at 4. Kickoff at 5. And then, as always, the best part, to me, the best part of the show is the Rider Nation Radio Roundtable postgame show with Justin and Wes, because the fans get a chance to talk and weigh in what's going on. And this weekend, you'll be able to watch our Rider Radio live stream on Saturday by going to sportscage.com. All right. We're going to take a break, and coming back after 4, he is Lieutenant Eric. I don't know how he got that rank. He's from Edmonton Sports Talk, and there's some weird stuff going on with the Elks and the Oilers, and we'll get what's going on with him. This is the all-new Sports Cage on 620 CKRM. We've got a final in Major League Baseball. The Detroit Tigers have knocked off the Cleveland Guardians 3-0, and they now lead the series 2-1. Scoreless in the third inning. Phillies and Mets. It's Maz and Dave Thomas filling in for Barney today on the all-new Sports Cage. In about an hour's time, Dante Decaria from the Regina Pats will join us. Landon DuPont is in town. He's got exceptional status, and he plays for the Everett Silvertips. And tonight, the Pats are going to take on Everett, and we're going to get Dante's take on this. He's an incredible young man and a great hockey player, and Dante's got some great insight as to what you're going to see tonight at the Brand Center. But let's bring on our next guest. One of his partners in crime, Dustin Nielsen, who does CFL play-by-play on TSN, also does a show called Edmonton Sports Talk with this guy right here. His name is Lieutenant Eric. He's back on the all-new SportsCage to say hi. And we'll get into the name in a bit. Eric, thank you for coming back on the show. We really appreciate it. A couple of kooky questions about the Edmonton Elks. First, Jarius Jackson was playing coy about his starting quarterback, and now Trey Ford's in. And did I read this correctly that McLeod Bethel-Thompson isn't even going to dress for this game?
Yeah, this is a wild situation. And I just want to say, excuse my teeth. I took an accident off one of those Lime scooters a couple of months back, and it was pretty gruesome. So this isn't my regular look. I just want to say that, but it looks pretty terrible, I know. Terrible is another word you can attribute to the Elks this season. It's been a mess. You mentioned Jarius Jackson and his weird playing coy decision-making. This is after he announced, albeit, I mean, they were still kind of in the mix with those wins over Calgary and the Labor Day back-to-backs, a crucial back-to-back with the Bombers in which both teams are entering into a bye week, and he announced, hey, Trey Ford's starting at quarterback, giving the Bombers more time to prepare for the young quarterback. So the decision-making up to this point has been bizarre. It always has been bizarre in the handling of Trey, whether it's been Chris Jones coaching the team or now Jarius Jackson in the interim tag, who, was part of Jones's staff. So there's a lot of rumblings behind the scenes. I know a few people have been putting things out that he's a cancer in the room. I've talked to people that work on our station as well that have been part of the organization to say flat out that's not true. He's a great guy. We've had him in our station a couple of times on a couple of shows. So the handling has been bizarre, but you're right. MBT was not taking snaps yesterday. It'll be Trey Ford. It'll be Deggy, I believe, at backup, and then Dakota Prukop at that QB3 spot. But up until now, the handling has been very bizarre, and I don't get it. And again, when you're trying to build for the future, I understand what Jones was doing in the offseason maybe and bringing in a guy like MBT. He needed to win yesterday, and he banked on the veteran. And as most football coaches usually take that conservative route, didn't pay off for him. And I think fans here, they're all behind Trey. They just want a little excitement. I think everybody knew that this wasn't going to be a winning season. You never know in the CFL. However, when it kind of didn't turn out like that, people just wanted to see Trey. They just wanted to see a glimpse of the future. And not only that, but also send the signal and message to him that he's part of the future. Whereas now, the jury's still out on all that. So no, this week, MBT, I guess, will be riding the pine. As I mentioned, no snaps yesterday. I assume that's the rhythm today. And it'll be Trey for the final two. But I don't, again, know what you're kind of gauging out of a guy. You know what you have fully when it's two garbage time games.
I'm fanboying out here a little bit. If you haven't followed Edmonton Sports Talk, of course, Lieutenant Eric is an Esty Award winner for the Show of the Year, I believe, correct? And also...
I got gutsiest performance of the year. I got a trophy, and it was for showing up, doing a show live at a casino after a Super Bowl party in which we don't need to get into the details, but it was a gutsy performance, and the trophy is well worth it.
Yeah, and I truly hope that someday I may be conch-worthy, but I know I have a long ways to go on that. But I do want to bring up the fact that, coaches before have said, if you listen to the fans, soon you're going to be sitting with the fans. But is this an instance right now in Edmonton where if you don't play Trey Ford, you're going to end up sitting with the fans?
Larry Thompson, the new owner, is in a great spot because you've acquired this asset, this nostalgic, historical one at that, and you have a chance to really clean house and set a new course. They need to get a president, which will probably be announced later this month in terms of the leaves that I'm reading. And then I think you go from there. But if you're going to just say you have to hire people who will name Trey the quarterback and all this stuff, then, as you say, that's kind of sitting with the fans. I would just put smart football people and football ops people in place to then make those decisions, whether it's with Trey Ford, your quarterback, or somebody else. But in terms of Jarius Jackson and everything such as that, the decision-making was weird. And I go back to that Bombers game because they did have a little momentum. And you guys know this, too. You cover the league inside out. They were the power ranking darling for a while there. And I, too, have thought all season they have good talent on this team. It's not a total scrap heap. They lost 3 games by a walk-off kickoff. Bad no luck for Chris Jones, although something had to change. You had to switch it up a bit. But Jarius did have a chance, and people were saying, take off that interim tag if they get to a playoff spot or if they get a home game, which was still on the cards. But again, the decision-making and announcing him the starter, heading into that bye week, with giving the Bombers, of all teams, 2 weeks to prepare for a quarterback when you have two different styles of quarterback. I mean, that's the time you kind of play coy and say, are you going to get the pocket guy? Are you going to get the running guy? Make him guess a bit. But I just don't understand that decision-making, and I think then it's really snowballed into the negative. So whether or not they will start Trey, but right now I think if he sides with the fans and does what they want, a la starting Trey, it's probably not going to matter at this point. And to me, too, I'm not an Elks fan. I cover the team, but it's probably best you don't make the playoffs at this stage. And because then that just justifies, well, maybe MBT's got it. Maybe I think at this point, and I go back to the Larry Thompson acquisition, you have an opportunity now to set course in a new direction with some fresh faces, especially at the top. Sean Fleming's name has been punted around. Ed Hervey's name has been punted around, albeit by the fans. But again, to get them on your side again, to get butts in the seats again, I think appointments such as those and those types of names wouldn't be a bad place to start.
He's Lieutenant Eric from Edmonton Sports Talk joining us on the all-new Sports Cage. We're talking about the Edmonton Elks. Now, I know on the weekend, mathematically, the Elks were eliminated, but I'll agree with you, Eric. That first Bomber game at home, had they played McLeod, Bethel, Thompson, and they win, that momentum keeps going. But after losing that, I thought, you know what, your season's over because you're not going to go to Winnipeg and win there. And then that game ended up being over within the first 5 minutes of the game. And I think that's where it really spiraled. So do you think Jarius Jackson survives this? And is he going to be... So here's... Does Jackson survive, but does Jason Shivers survive on the defensive side? Or is it it's got to be a clean sweep? If you're doing one, you got to do them all.
Yeah, and again, I go back to... You got to put a president in place. The president then needs to decide. And I guess that right now, too, of what I've heard is there's a bit of a struggle as to whom there's a couple of sides wanting two different people to be in that position. So already we're kind of seeing, but I guess that's good. Competition's good, but start there, then put a GM in place, get those roles, and then figure out, and then hire a coach and see who that coach wants on his staff. I just think this working backwards all the time and having to, say, hey, we want to keep this guy, and then we're going to hire this guy above him, but he's going to have to keep him, and then hire the guys in a domino effect. That would be my play. And to go back again with Jackson and Shivers, look, the defense has been playing good, and since Chris Jones left and Shivers has kind of gotten those reins, and you guys know his time in Saskatchewan as well, I'm kind of a big fan of the guy. But I don't think you can roll any of it back. It's such a sour thing right now and such a sour vibe that, bring back an athletic therapist or bring back an assistant line, like something along those lines is fine. Something kind of in the shadows. No offense to those people, they do great work. But I think, again, this is such a good reason and such a good time to just clean slate and start fresh. And again, as I said, put the people in place at the top. They can cascade down with their hires. And if it is Shivers, fine. And if it is, by some stretch, Jarius Jackson, well, that's cool too, if that's what they deem. But I just think it's more than wins in this market right now, and there's been such a sourness over the past few years that I think it needs to be more than wins. The fan base would have wanted to see Trey this season, wins or not, just to see what you had. So I think now you have an opportunity again. There are a lot of names out there that breed a lot of nostalgia. Whether that translates to success, who knows? But I just think to recapture the fan base again, that's kind of where you start. So Shivers, I like the guy. I think he's a good coach. And Jarius, too. I think he's probably good. Chris Jones is a great defensive coach. He was wearing too many hats, I think. But, I would just say probably whoever they hire in the GM head coaching spot, if they deem necessary, fine. But I wouldn't just go today and say, well, you're safe. Who's going to be your boss?
I apologize for editorializing in the middle of a conversation, but number one, putting fans back in the seats. I think Larry's fire truck race went a long way to doing that over the weekend.
That was hilarious.
That was awesome.
They're already doing promos during the game. They'll dress fans up in these mini fire truck costumes, and they have a little race around the field or whatever. So he's got that going, and I have to give him credit. It's been a short turnaround in that respect. But the game day, the in-house experience has already translated a little better. So here's to better things and better days.
And I will say that I went on record saying that the Edmonton Elks were the best 0-7 team in the history of football. I thought they were sensational. Just I don't know what it was that couldn't push them over that top to get the wins. So maybe it's a quarterback change. If you look into your crystal ball, who starts at quarterback week number 1 next season for the Edmonton Elks? And it may not be someone on the roster, right?
We toss this. We toss this football around the show a lot, like every second morning, and just the musical chairs of the CFL quarterbacking, universe. And the VAJ question always pops up. Where's Vernon Adams Jr. going to go? I mean, BC, you can't keep both of these guys if they get paid on your roster. I know down south, Calgary has a problem as well. Both these teams are out of the playoffs. They're looking to freshen up, and they need to. You need those prairie teams clicking. I don't know if Jake Mayer is necessarily the answer. He might be up here. But where else VAJ goes, I mean, that's the thing. And I think for Trey Ford, too, I mean, a lot of people are saying, well, why would he want to be back here? Well, I mean, where else is he going to get a shot? Now, you could argue he might get a backup role, say, hypothetically, in Hamilton. Maybe a Taylor Powell thing. I don't know where they are with Bo Levi, if he's going to be going back. You got Trevor Harris, too, in Regina that might... I mean, there are a lot of possibilities. I think we've discussed each and every one, and each and every one is pretty fun. It's going to be a heck of an off season. To answer your question, man, I can't. But it can't be Trey, because you just haven't seen enough of him yet. And I don't know which coach. I mean, whoever a team, say it's the Rough Riders or the Ticats, whoever goes after him, I don't know how you could legitimately say to a fan base, he's our starter next season, day one, because we've seen enough from him. So I think, again, you unfortunately have to look to a veteran presence, whether that's Vernon Adams Jr., whether it's MBT, whether it's Jake Mayer. I could see MBT in red and white down south easily. I mean, that's a change of scenery. I don't think you can roll him back here again, just with the sourness that it's been. And that's nothing against him. I think he's a decent quarterback. He's held his own. You can argue his Grey Cup appearance maybe wasn't down to him, but it is veteran presence. So maybe he's backing up somebody. I know the Stamps brought in that PJ, what's his face from the NFL there, Browns quarterback. They're high on him. They traded 2 Neglis players for him, so maybe that develops too. But it's going to be a fascinating musical chairs in the offseason with a few fascinating names. And right now, I mean, you can create a lot of scenarios to where they're going to go. But in terms of Edmonton, again, I go back to who does the GM, whoever that is, and the head coach, and what's that philosophy? Like if it's, say, a Buck Pierce coming in, how does he want to run on offense, and what kind of quarterback are you getting there? So I think there are options out there, definitely. And it goes back to me saying this is a good time to reboot a franchise because you've got some different avenues that you can take if you so choose. Sorry for the lame answer, but...
No, that's great. It's Lieutenant Eric on the Western Pizza guest hotline. Let's shift gears. So in the very first hour of the show today, and I had said, I'm not against the Edmonton Oilers. I'm not against Connor McDavid. I'm just not a fan. But after seeing that clip of him crying after losing the Stanley Cup final, he got to me, man. That guy is all in. I always thought maybe, I don't know, but he is. I'm a fan. Like that was heart and soul, man. That killed him. That gutted him. And to see him bent over and the tears coming down like a waterfall, I can only imagine. You're an Oiler fan. I know. I watch you guys on social media. I watched the roller coaster of emotion last year going through all of that. When you see the clips of him crying in the dressing room, what does that do to you?
It's too emotional, man. Hockey players are supposed to be tough. That's not what I want to see in my cap. I joke, I jest. That was something. He's a guy that since he came to the city, and I've had a lot of colleagues, do one-on-ones with him and stuff. And he's a weird guy. He's a socially weird guy, obviously. And I think in any line of work, whether it's music, entertainment, sports, or whatever, brilliance and that it's a fine line, right? Like this is a guy that is well documented when he was a kid. He would just be so obsessed with playing hockey that would turn off a lot of his childhood friends. Which, I mean, again, you see guys committed to their craft, but not at a level such as this. So that emotion, when you know all of this, doesn't really surprise me, given the fact that what I've heard and how he's kind of developed in his life. He's a different cat, and it takes different cats to achieve different levels of success. He'll probably win a Stanley Cup. I mean, that's a given, but it is a team sport and the team construct around you, and the Oilers found themselves a little cap strung, and you saw last night Philip Broberg did Dylan Holloway getting in on the point parade for the St. Louis Blues. So he can't do it all himself. He's got a great riding mate in Draisaitl. But to go back to what you said, I mean, the emotion was there, and it's a curtain that we don't peek behind too often with this team. And basically, the hockey realm as a sport in general. I mean, hockey's you need more of this. Formula One, I've always been a big F1 fan. They had the Drive to Survive series, and Pop, everybody's a fan. And I was kind of like, whatever, I've been following this. But you need that. You need to get into the pop culture realm. You need to get to the people who don't necessarily, especially down south in the States, who maybe see this as a rinky-dink league or rinky-dink sport, and you show them this type of footage, and it probably cuts through a bit more. So I think that whole series as a whole translates to the general population, and hopefully, McDavid's emotion also captures people's imaginations outside of our market, outside of our country. That's kind of the goal and all that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was blasting off hot takes left, right, and center that, why is he crying, man? It's a tough sport. It's hockey. It's that type of thing. But all tongue-in-cheek, of course. But a fascinating glimpse because it was very emotional. And tonight, I mean, I wouldn't say that the city's drenched in excitement or anything. There's a lot of anxiety because getting to that point again is not a guarantee by any means. And I think if you've been watching TSN or Sportsnet or anywhere else, you've seen the pie charts and the graphs and the percentiles, and everybody's picking them. I've always thought that this group primarily do well when prognosticators kind of go against them and they get a little bulletin board fuel and that type of thing. So they got a lot of pressure, and this is the story now. And so they're going to have to kind of live up to that story and live up to that clip and live up to all of that stuff. So, and it starts tonight against a very tough Jets team, and the Jets coming in here, with nothing to lose and no pressure on them. So yeah, it was fascinating to see all that. But I mean, as well, I hated the preseason, so that was like our red meat fodder for a week, and I just like, this is dumb, let's get on with it,
So I would suggest that the tone around the Edmonton Oilers this season is that this season will not be a success unless, at very least, another trip to the Stanley Cup final, which we know is very hard to do. So I would suggest from game one tonight that the pressure is right on the Edmonton Oilers. And I think they felt that pressure at the start of last season. We all know what happened at the start of last season, that terrible start. But you're closer than anyone. Do you know what happened to turn this team around? And, I'd love to give a lot of props to the Imperial Sasaski boy in Chris Knobloch, but is that what it was? Was that purely coaching that turned things around into a Game 7 Stanley Cup appearance?
Glad you mentioned Chris and Imperial Saskatchewan, because it's a great town. And Connor Ingram as well, second star in the game last night too, representing. But no, it was. It really was. And again, going back to the Elks too, you need a change. And Jay Woodcroft was beloved in the city. And Dave Manson as well, another guy that had legend behind him. The problem was the PK was terrible. They brought in not only Chris Knobloch, but Coffey and Stewart as well was handling then the penalty kill, and that changed things dramatically. We had Knobloch on the show a week or two ago, and even in how he carries himself, I mean, he's a pretty level-headed guy. Jay Woodcroft, he always gave us great sound bites, and he was always reading the paper. Like, he knew what was kind of going on, which was nice too, but you need a guy, I think, with this group now, and the change was good with Knobloch. He's even-keeled. I mean, he doesn't get too high, he doesn't get too low in terms of his messaging. I think in terms of systems and stuff, it's pretty straightforward. They haven't changed a lot in terms of neutral zone, forward, press in the offensive zone and things such as that. It's not a big change. But I think the penalty kill got shored up. You've seen that the power play has always been fantastic. That's just a cheat code with the people you have on this roster. But the penalty kill was the big one. And I think that kind of stopped the bleeding or plugged a few holes in that ship. You always knew the talent was there. They were just on a bad skid. And again, it's a game played on ice with little knives on your shoes and a piece of rubber. So sometimes odd things happen, and they were happening in bunches. So I think it's a combination of all those things. Credit to the coaching staff, again, especially on the back end with Coffey and Stewart. But Knobloch has a demeanor to which, again, I think with this team and where they're at right now, it's a veteran group. I mean, he's not coming in here and yelling at them. They know what they need to do. It's, I think, the oldest team on paper age-wise. So he's in here, and he's providing some stability. Obviously has a history with Connor, which helps. Everybody that they hire now seems to have some sort of a history with him, which is kind of what you do. You surround your best player with people he's familiar and comfortable with. Yep. So, it's a combination of things. That last year's start was kind of an oblong thing. But I think it also, and as I said, I go back to the point, I think this team is better when they have a little bit of adversity biting them in the ass, because it's just, they had to come out from behind that, and they had to chase it all year, and it was exhausting, but they still got to the final. You can't say that burnt them out or anything. So a bit of a sliver in their finger I don't think hurts them. And I think if you go out this season and dominate and you say get a President's Trophy, that just heaps on the pressure that much more. So I'm not saying going out there and drop games purposely. Obviously, they're not going to do that. But it's kind of a funny thing that in life, too, when you get a little too fat and happy, you might turn off mentally or emotionally or psychologically in a few moments. So we'll see how this season goes. I hope if fans clearly don't want it to be the roller coaster again and them having to chase it. But, I mean, the Florida Panthers, look on their playoff positioning last year, too. You get into the dance. They'll probably win the division, which they should. Now, the conference, okay, Colorado's going to be a great team, and Dallas is fantastic. I love Dallas. I love that team. I love the makeup. I love the chemistry. So a lot of things can happen, but I think you got to love them for the division. Whatever happens after that in terms of seeding, and I know you could argue, some fans argue, well, if they had home ice, yeah, well, Game 7 would have maybe been different, but I just do love this team when they kind of have a bit of adversity chasing them and propelling them on. So, it was a terrible start last year, but I think it was something that they almost needed because it helped them work through a lot of those things. And full credit to the coaching staff again. That was a coaching change that was needed, and it clearly helped in all aspects of the game.
Now, I've been to the Imperial Hotel bar one weekend when we were there for a slow pitch tournament, and it was packed. And what a vibe! Yeah. I can only imagine if Chris Knobloch showed up with the Stanley Cup. The vibe that day may be a little better than that slow pitch tournament in the mid '90s. You mentioned Colorado. You mentioned Dallas. Who knows if the Kings get it back together? Who's that one team in the Western Division you worry about for the Oilers that seems to kind of have their number, that just for whatever reason is the team that they don't want to see?
A banana peel of sorts. And you mentioned the Kings, and to me the Kings, and I don't know if they're going to be necessarily better. I mean, Kemper's the goalie now. Fogle went there as well. Arvidsson comes up to Edmonton. They should be a steady team, but they always play. It's been quite a grudge match over the past few years, and I've always said the Oilers have gotten past them, but it's never really been easy, as in terms of on paper, and a lot of people make it out to be. So the Kings, not necessarily challenging them, but if they find themselves in another opening round series, that could be tricky. Dallas, Colorado, yes, in the Central, but sticking with. And another Central team I'll say is Nashville. And I think what Barry Trotz has done there too in building that rather quickly. A wild card darling last year, but I think they've added some pieces that could maybe see them go on a bit of a tear and a bit of a run. Although Leon Draisaitl historically, his numbers against Nashville are just phenomenal. So I think they changed the Wikipedia page. Everybody was mayor of, Leon Draisaitl was the mayor and all that. So Nashville, I like them, but I don't know how much of a challenge, I guess, to your question, they would be to the Oilers. Dallas and Colorado, and then within the division, I mean, the Kings. A lot of people are talking about the Kraken for some reason if they get hot goaltending, and I mean, I don't know. Stranger things have happened. It's a league where you do get every year. There's always that team that jumps up from out of nowhere and surprises, and maybe they start off hot and they kind of ride that wave and stay above 500 for a long time. But in terms of really giving the Oilers a push for their money, I'd have to say, again, the Kings, just because of that rivalry that's existed over the past few years. They play them tough. And Vancouver as well. How can I forget about them? And that was a series last year, too, that Shelov's, showed up, stood out. That could have been curtains for the Oilers as well. That people were etching the tombstone last year. It was happening. It's every fan base is fickle to a point, and there were a lot of people here dyed in the wool that were just, it's over, it's done. And so Vancouver I could see too, but the goaltending question there is the big one, right? And Thatcher Demko's injury that nobody has seen in the world of hockey before still looms large. We don't know what timeline he has. So that'll be a question. I think there's too many of those teams within the division have a lot of question marks above them, and that's why they won't push the Oilers so much, but might provide, as you mentioned, a bit of a thorn or a banana peel to them.
All righty. And last night, a little bit of hockey trivia. Former Edmonton Oil King Dylan Guenther scoring the very first goal for the Utah Hockey Club. Are we going to settle on? Are they going to be the Yeti? I don't know. Can we just?
Be the Yeti.
I said to Dave, are we just going to call just? How are we just going to settle on Utah and everybody knows what we're talking about? Do we have to add in Hockey Club every time? Because it just seems weird until they get a nickname.
I'm a big fan of soccer, European, and my Dusty obviously calls the Spengler Cup. and they call their team names, HC for hockey club over there. But what I would like, I don't mind it. I get it's a stopgap, much like the PWHL had a stopgap with their, last year they were just going under the city title and everything like that. But it's going to be Yeti. I mean, it's kind of the worst kept secret now, unless they kind of do an about face. The colors are pretty cool. It'll fit a Yeti thing. I just keep thinking of the Kootenay/Cranbrook Ice all the time. Like I'm envisioning that type of logo and mascot. But if you're going to have hockey club, for the love of God, on all the apps and everything, like have the team names like say Flames and then hockey club. Well, just put Utah in there. Like it's or UHC or something. But like this morning, I jokingly referred to them as the Utah Hockey Clubs because that's kind of how people are like. It's a Utah Hockey Club. That's it. You can't call them. It's not a thing. Like it's just that's the name of the team. It's not an animal. Like they're playing the hockey club tonight. Well, you gotta say the full thing or nothing. So I just hope that people would get that vernacular correct because that's what's really kind of. It's grinding my gears. I can take it for a season. It's fine. It's a stopgap, but it's just dumb the way it's being used. That's all I'm saying. UHC.
All right. Well, we're going to call Gary Bettman because Lieutenant Eric is fired up. Thank you for coming on the show again. It's Lieutenant Eric of Edmonton Sports Talk, him and his co-host Dustin Nielsen. We appreciate that. You can find them on social media. All right. We're going to take a break on the all-new Sports Cage. When we come back, we're going to talk NHL cap space. Some clubs are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, while other clubs are in the millions. Where does your team fall? Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. It's the all-new Sports Cage on 620 CKRM and at sportscage.com. The all-new Sports Cage is giving you a chance to win Saskatchewan Roughrider tickets to see the Plaza of Honor games Saturday against the BC Lions. A home playoff game is on the line. There's a guy named Darian Durant going to be brought out at halftime along with Roy Shivers, and their names are going to go up and be forever enshrined at Mosaic Stadium. If you would like to win a pair of tickets, all you need to do is text the word RIDERS with an S to 306-936-6262. Riders to 306-936-6262. That's the Capital Ford Lincoln text line. And best of luck. Forecast for Saturday, we checked, Dave. The
sunny
daytime
14.
high, sunny 14, but by a 5 o'clock kickoff. And that temperature is going to come down. Sun's going to start down. So what are we thinking? Maybe 7-8 degrees by kickoff?
Actually, 5 o'clock, it should hold true. I'm looking at my app, right, where it's got the hourly temperatures, and I was looking at about 11 degrees. So it's been much warmer here in Regina all week long, like warmer than anticipated, to the point that I got a sunburn at practice yesterday. So I think it's going to be a beautiful night for football.
I mean, it is that time of year. If you're going to the game, you just pack everything. You can always take off layers. It sucks in the second quarter where you're like, I should have brought a jacket. We've all been there before. We've been that guy, cool guy, who is cold because he didn't, warm enough. And I'm at the age, I'm not going to, I can't go stand in pill country and get my blood alcohol level high enough where the weather's not going to affect me. So,
okay, fair enough.
So it should be good. We mentioned this earlier when we had Pat Steinberg on in the first hour of the show. And if you missed any part of that conversation, he goes in deep on the Flames because he covers them. You can catch the podcast at sportscage.com. He had mentioned that the Calgary Flames have some of the largest amount of cap space of any team in the NHL, $18.6 million that they have to play with. And to your point, they can, if you're watching on the stream, they can entertain any offers. Let's start, Dave, with the guys that just aren't managing the money well. Let's start with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Social media darlings to automatically win the Stanley Cup because Austin Matthews is the captain. Fans are delusional. And if you can see that, that's a zero. And that includes LTIR. They have no room to move. And I heard Brad Treliving the other day talking about, Mitch Marner, and we're so happy, we're so glad. They should have done something in the offseason with that guy, loaded up on assets, gave themselves some room, something to afford themselves the opportunity for breathing room. How can you operate at zero?
Well, I think Toronto believes in their heart of hearts that they're going all in. Going all in for a Stanley Cup run this year. They've got the team, and I believe that's what Toronto is going to do, right? Brendan Shanahan, who oversees all things hockey, he's gone ahead and he's in the final year of his deal. So he knows that they got to make a run. And so I think the sexy move would have been to move Mitch Marner in the offseason or do something with his contract coming up. But as you can see, right, with the cap space, they're at zero. So there's not a lot that they can do. And what are you going to be able to do? How can you make a move with Mitch Marner that will make you a better hockey team without him on your roster? So I believe that Toronto truly believes in their heart of hearts that this is the year that they're going all in, and that's why they're sitting at zero. Just saying.
Now, so for as much as people love to laugh at the Leafs and the misery that is hashtag 1967, hey, Montreal Canadian fans, guess how much cap space you have to play with? You already know this, but for the average fan, you're at zero as well, and you're dealing with LTIR. And here's the difference. The Canadians don't have a stacked roster like the Leafs do. So, Dave, who are the Canadians paying all? Is Nick Suzuki eating up that much salary? Like, where's the rest of the money going?
Well, still on the books is, and this is where the LTIR comes in, and that's Carey Price, right? He is still the top paid goaltender in the National Hockey League. So that's where their money has gone. But I think there's other, and capologists, I have all the respect in the world for the people that can go ahead and figure this out. But when teams make deals now, there are salary retention opportunities. So Shea Weber, for example, right? He was on the books for a long time. I don't know if he's come off the books or not, as he's been moved around a few times to allow teams to get to the floor of the cap. So that's where I think it becomes confusing as far as how much salary have you retained from other deals? Or maybe you've retained some cap space for deals, right? Again, that's out there, and that's what makes it confusing. And that's why, to me, again, if you're watching this on X or YouTube today or just at sportscage.com, you can see where the Vegas Golden Knights have got just under $600,000 worth of cap room.
Nice.
Now, we all know that come the trade deadline, that's going to add up to about $20 million, maybe 15. But that's
Kelly
why
McCrimmon's a genius, Kay. Kelly McCrimmon is a genius.
He is an absolute genius. Absolutely.
Okay, so,
he knows how to do it.
So there's a couple more zeros on the board. You have the Washington Capitals at zero with LTIR. You have the Pittsburgh Penguins at zero with LTIR. But do you want to know, out of all of this, the most impressive, and I thought this was a typo, the Carolina Hurricanes have $3, not 3,000, not 30,000. On the graphic that we have, they have $3 of cap space. Now, is that some smart aleck in accounting going to, well, Rod's not the... I don't know if I'd talk to Rod Brindamore if I was a nerd in the analytics department, because he scares me. But to somebody somewhere be like, hey, guess what, boss? We got $3 wiggle room for the cap.
That was like
this year.
back in the day when we carried money and you could pull the change out of your pocket and you'd have exact change for what you needed, right? That's the exact same analysis right there.
Rangers are $0 LTIR. And did you hear that Igor Shesterkin turned down $11 million a season, which would have made him the highest paid goalie in the NHL? So what is his agent? What are they going after? If he won't take 11, what's the number?
And he wants it over 8 years, right? So
yeah,
that to me, that one's a mind-boggling one. Like, I would agree that he is top 3 in the league right now and should probably be paid accordingly.
But being in New York State with all of those taxes and stuff like that, that doesn't play out. Like if he's in Florida or he's in Nevada. When it comes to cap space, the team with the most, and the NHL is giving them the exemption to get to the floor, and a lot of this had to do with the passing of Johnny Gaudreau. The Columbus Blue Jackets have the most space at $20.3 million. So they are going to be one of those teams, like you said, probably going to be taking on contracts throughout the season just to get money on the books, whether or not those players come along and play or not. Florida Panthers, man, I don't know if you saw any of that game last night, but the Florida Panthers are good again.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good hockey team. They got about $130K breathing room. And then what did they lock up Carter Verhaeghe yesterday?
Yeah.
For 8 years. And did you see, I saw it on Twitter, his story where he was cut multiple times. He ended up in the East Coast Hockey League and like basically written off for nothing. and then comes back, eventually wins a cup with Tampa Bay, and then they didn't have enough cap space to keep him and ends up in Florida, and just he has turned out to be. And then Sam Reinhart looked good last night, and Sam Bennett looked like a killer. And if you're the Boston Bruins, you should have just given that money to Swayman, because Jonas Korpisalo is not going to be the answers to your prayers when it comes to goaltending or whatever. Get Swayman in as fast as you can.
Well, I look at that, and the one thing that I look at when I'm observing the Florida Panthers is I feel bad for Calgary. Sam Bennett, Tkachuk, the list goes on. It's like, oh.
But remember at the time, Bill Zito, it was a huge dummy, and he got fleeced by Brad Treliving.
Oh, he did. Yeah.
They got Huberdeau and Tkachuk and everybody. All of the hockey insiders and the experts, all of these guys inside, everybody was all over Bill Zito because he got taken to the cleaners and this was a horrible deal and how could you do this? And Bill didn't say anything, and obviously he had a plan, and the plan worked perfectly last year, obviously, because there's a Stanley Cup that they're never going to be able to take away now. Maybe he saw, obviously he saw something that no one else did, to be like, we can live without Huberdeau. For what we're going to get back is going to be better than what we have. And Pat Steinberg even said, in 2 seasons, Jonathan Huberdeau still hasn't even eclipsed what he did in a season in Florida. So who looks like the genius now?
Absolutely.
Who else on this list? Oh, and we should mention, since we had Lieutenant Derek on, and I know that Oiler fans, this is actually good. This is better than I thought. They got $950,000 to play with.
But that's why they couldn't match those offer sheets from St. Louis, because they didn't have any money.
I know. And isn't Kane going to start the season on LTIR, and they don't expect him back until maybe February, March next year? Was it a hernia surgery or sports hernia surgery?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things, yeah. There was a shopping list of things that he needed to get fixed. And I feel bad. Credit to the guy for playing through it, but wow.
Do you think he's ever paid off those Vegas gambling debts yet?
Oh, I'm not going there. Alleged.
The picture of him with the money by the ear is still one of the best social media photos whenever that gets shared. Yeah. Speaking of hockey, what's your favorite all-time hockey movie? At SportsCage.com. That's our poll question today. You're a movie critic. Remember Siskel and Ebert? You can do a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Your choices are Mystery Alaska, The Mighty Ducks, Miracle, Slapshot, or Youngblood. You can cast your vote now at SportsCage.com. Time for a quick break. Dante Decaria will join us just after 5. The Everett Silvertips are in town, and tonight, Landon DuPont, who has exceptional status in the Western Hockey League this season, will be suited up for the Silvertips at the Brand Center, and we'll catch up with Dante and find out about this young man and we're only a few games into the season, and then the things he's already doing. Stick close. It's the all-new Sports Cage on 620 CKRM. 2 games in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League tonight. You've got the Estevan Bruins at the Humboldt Broncos, and you have the Notre Dame Hounds in Kindersley to take on the Clippers. How about it? The number 1 ranked team at SportsCage.com in the power rankings for the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, the Melville Millionaires, finally lost a game, Dave. 6-2 to your hometown Weyburn Red Wings.
Well, I tell you, they have done a job down in Weyburn loading up with some talent recently. They've made a number of acquisitions and brought in some guys. Young Cody Mapes, the head coach and general manager there, he said, you know what, this is the year. We're going to go for a run. They've got probably the best goaltender in the league, arguably. So they come up with a big win last night. That was a statement victory over a very, very good Melville Millionaire team.
And I saw on social media earlier today, they're gearing up. They've got a big event coming up with Jeremy Roenick going to be there in the next couple of weeks, speaking at a dinner. To me, JR is one of those guys that, in a world where a lot of people are worried about being canceled, JR's not worried. JR's going to be JR. He's going to speak his mind. But what a refreshing these days. It's a breath of fresh air where he's going to say it like it is, and he's okay with that. He got canceled once. He got fired from NBC. But if you've listened to his podcast with Tim Peel, he's doing A-OK. And JR is JR, and he's shooting from the hip. And I bet you dollars to donuts, everybody that night listening to him speak will be shoulders leaned over. They'll be all in, committed to hearing every word that he has to say, because it's not a passive situation when he talks. So good on you. SportsCage.com. We've got those Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League rankings for Southie Mainline Chrysler, the king of trucks. It is playoff time when it comes to Major League Baseball, and it's time to go around the horn with our baseball expert, Dave Thomas.
It's time to go around the horn for Shore-D Generators. Keep the power in your hands with an automatic standby generator from Shore-D Generators, the standby generator experts. The Major League Baseball playoffs, they're in full swing, and today 2 of the 4 best-of-5 divisional series can come to a close. In the National League, the New York Mets, after clinching their postseason spot on the last day of the regular season, can eliminate Philadelphia. The Mets out-hit the Phillies 7-2 yesterday to take a 2-1 lead in their set. Meanwhile, San Diego scored 6 times in the second inning and then hung on for dear life, including surrendering a Teoscar Hernandez grand slam, but they were able to get a 6-5 Game 3 win to take a 2-1 lead in that series. Padres slugger Fernando Tatis Jr.
Man, when you play baseball like this in the postseason, you get all those memory backs and you just feel grateful where you at and just embracing every single moment and definitely not taking for granted.
In the American League, Kansas City and the Yankees will meet for Game 3 in their series later today. That set is even at a win apiece after the Royals' 4-2 win on Monday. Salvador Perez hit a homer in that win for the Royals.
I don't want to call myself out because I know how hard it is to make it to the playoff, and that's why I like to enjoy every moment, because you never know when you're going to go back again.
The other series has Cleveland in Detroit with their best-of-5 divisional series knotted at a win apiece. And that's Around the Horn for Shore-D Generators. Keep the power in your hands with an automatic standby generator from Shore-D Generators, the standby generator experts.
A home playoff game is on the line Saturday at Mosaic Stadium. It's also the Plaza of Honor game as Darian Durant and Roy Shivers are being inducted tomorrow night. Your Saskatchewan Roughriders are going to take on the BC Lions. Our countdown to kickoff here on 620 CKRM will start at 2 o'clock. You can also watch our live stream at sportscage.com. And if you would like to go to the game, we have tickets to give away. Text the word RIDERS with an S, 306-936-6262. Did you see that somebody texted in a picture of, we were talking about Las Vegas earlier, a Las Vegas Posse jacket. Now that is some classic CFL gear.
That's Matt Young. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's good. That's going back a ways, which, in all respect. And if you don't remember, if you're a young CFL fan, that's where a guy, this young up-and-coming buck of a quarterback named Anthony Calvillo, got his start. And I remember it was on a Saturday night, and I remember being at a house party in Moose Jaw, and the game happened to be on TV, and the Riders ended up losing to the Las Vegas Posse. And Anthony Calvillo, like, how much worse can it get? We're losing to these expansion teams. And it was Anthony Calvillo that was the quarterback of the team that night.
See, and I think that he has a collection of vintage CFL American team swag, if you know what I mean. I think that he's got Sacramento Gold Miners.
Yes.
Probably has something from Baltimore when they were the CFLers.
David Archer from the Sacramento Gold Miners. He had our number as well. And then Matt Dunnigan, when he played for the Birmingham Barracudas.
Oh, yeah.
He always, so. Yeah. So if you want to win a pair of tickets, Riders, 306-936-6262, Capital Ford Lincoln text line. Tonight at the Brandt Center, the 5-1 Everett Silvertips will be in town. They're tops in the West Division of the Western Hockey League, and one of the players on their roster is Landon DuPont, son of Mickey, who had a great Western Hockey League career. He has exceptional status in the Western Hockey League. And tonight, he'll have the call of the game right here on the mighty 620 CKRM. Dante Decaria, the Regina Pats. Now, you got a chance to see a lot of exceptional players and status among the Bedard years. What are you most looking forward to about tonight and Landon DuPont once he hits the ice?
He's the first ever exceptional status defenseman in the Western Hockey League. That's what I'm looking forward to the most. And funny you mentioned that. I had the opportunity to go to the morning skate this morning and actually quickly sit down and chat with Landon. I did a quick interview with him that will air in the first intermission show of tonight's broadcast. Just such a well put together kid, very respectful. And what stood out to me, and it might be a small detail, but I think it's large, when he came up and met me, he answered me by my name, shook my hand very firm, not like a boy, not like a 15-year-old boy, like a 40-year-old man, and looked me straight in the eye and said, "Nice to meet you." And I was very impressed with his maturity, his demeanor, how he carried himself, how he spoke to me, the conversation we had. So really impressed with him as a person, and really looking forward to see what he does on the ice tonight as a player. From what I understand, he's very good defensively and offensively. Had a neat chat with the coaching staff. They did some video on him, watched him, and his skating, his edge work, his hockey IQ is just through the roof. I mean, he is projected to be like Cale Makar, and I think he's on the right path.
Dante, I was talking with a friend of mine that was actually in Brandon last night where the Everett Silvertips played, and he said, this kid is somebody you got to watch. Just the raw skill that he displays on the ice, which I think is sensational. So somebody listening right now in the Regina area, get a ticket, head down to the Brandt Center, because it's going to be a great game. But you, as Maz alluded to, you talked to Connor Bedard, and I thought you did a terrific job, not just you, but as an organization, to make sure that everyone was reminded this is a 15-year-old kid. If you had some advice or any words of wisdom that you would pass along to Landon DuPont, what would they be, being this his first go-around in the Western Hockey League?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Landon and I talked a little bit of those different things that Connor went through when he was here with the Regina Pats. And, you know, my biggest advice to him, honestly, and it's something that Connor and I have talked about a lot in the last year or so, is, you know, how much you're really going to miss playing junior once you do make it to the NHL. Like, Connor loves the Western Hockey League. He still follows the Regina Pats very closely, keeps in touch with guys like Zach Shantz and Tanner Howe in particular, to name a few. And he really does. He really did enjoy playing in the WHL. So for Landon, I think he needs to enjoy the next 3 or 4 years, because once you get to the NHL, you're playing, you know, for money. So the expectations are higher. The expectations in terms of the pressure of the market are obviously a lot higher. And you're essentially asked as a teenager to take care of yourself and to be a man, which is not easy. And then, you know, to second that, Dave, you know, once you play in the NHL and you're a teenager, everyone around you is much older. They have families. They have different things that they do on their off time. Whereas when you're playing in the WHL, everybody that you're around in terms of the team bus, stuff like that, are all people that are the same age of you. So my biggest advice for Landon would be to just enjoy the next couple of years. Don't take it for granted, because once it's over, you're going to look back on it and say, man, what a fun time to play junior in the WHL for the Everett Silvertips, because it's really 4 years that will last a lifetime. Whether it's 3 or 4 years or 5, whatever it may be for Landon, I think that's, you know, something that Connor enjoyed the most. Not to say that he doesn't like playing in the NHL. I'm sure he does, and I know he does, but he really did enjoy his time with the Regina Pats.
It's game day for the Pats, and tonight, 6:30, the pregame show on 620 CKRM, face-off at 7 o'clock. Dante Decaria, voice of the Pats, is with us. Now, Dante, Everett comes in 5-1, first in the West. Pats, middle of the pack in the East Division, we're 3-2. But here's the thing that stands out. We haven't scored a ton of goals, but our power play seems to be clicking. Is that, and you had said before the season started, this is going to be by committee, it's going to take everybody on the roster, but how key is it that power play keeps producing throughout the season when the roster isn't necessarily stacked with goal scorers?
Yeah, I've actually been really impressed with how the team has played defensively, and the goaltending has also been solid as well. You look at Kelton Pine's numbers, a .920 save percentage so far this season, and you're right, Maz. I mean, you look at the roster up and down, and it's going to have to be scoring by committee. You're going to have to look to different faces, different heroes every single night. Look at Corbin Allman, who scored the shootout winner last weekend, and as well as a goal in the third period. He was one of the heroes up front for the Pats outside of Kelton Pine's performance. And yes, you're right. The power play has been very solid. They haven't had a ton of opportunities. I think they're 3 for 14 so far this season, which is still or 4 for 14, which is still good for a 31 percentile rate. That's still fairly good. That's actually very good. And the penalty kill is around 86% this year. So special teams has been solid. Goaltending has been good. Defensively, the Pats have been good. But to me, the thing that has stood out the most about the way the Pats have been able to win these games is that they haven't had any meltdowns in the third period. And oftentimes last year it would be a one-goal game going into the third. Things were close. Maybe they were up a goal, and then all of a sudden they would implode, and the opposition would score maybe 2 or 3, and the game was over. Things are staying fairly close. I think that has to be thanks to, in part, to the goaltending and obviously defensively as well. I think the young guys have done a good job, and I think the veterans have done a good job as well.
Puck hits the ice tonight at 7 o'clock, Dante, and you know what? It's been a long time since I had an opportunity to go to the Brandt Center and watch a game as a fan, and our family went out. We had a great time. The double popcorn, top drawer. But we had a chance to listen to you and Drew, and a sensational job, by the way. But the one thing you guys talked about was the older players on the roster needing to step up for the Pats to be successful. I know it's a small sample size, but do you think the trend or the team is trending in the right direction with those older players?
Yeah, that's a really good point that you bring up, Dave. And yeah, Drew and I did talk about that on the broadcast. And I think from talking with Brad Haroff, he shares kind of the same thought process. And you're right, the older players have to be your best players. There are some players on this team that have now been here for a year, and they're asked to step it up. And I know Tanner Howe's out of the lineup with an injury, so you're going to have to look to guys like Jackson Vaughn, who's not got on the score sheet with a goal just yet. How about Zach Moore? He's played in 5 games this year, hasn't recorded a goal. Cole Temple hasn't scored just yet. Sam Maremba has just 1 goal. So those guys have to step it up because Tanner Howe's not there to carry the load offensively. Braxton Whitehead hasn't scored a goal just yet. So those guys have to be asked to carry the load offensively. So those veteran players need to lead not only by example, but they also have to lead in terms of the staff department as well. They need to find ways to contribute offensively because you're taking on an Everett Silvertips team this year that's leading the league in goals, averaging close to 5 per game. Meanwhile, the Regina Pats are only averaging 2.5 per game right now. So they need to find different ways to score. They're getting chances to score. Their shot count has been in the 30 mark, which is good. The goaltending has been solid, but if they're able to get to that 4 or 5 goal mark, then they'll have a chance to win more nights than not. And last year, it's quite actually interesting. I was able to pull a stat together that actually, when the Pats scored 4 or more goals, they were close to undefeated or had a 90% winning percentage last year. And obviously, there's only been 5 games this year, and the Pats have only scored 4 goals once. But I think the same goes for this year as well. If you get to that 4 goal mark, which to me is that sweet spot, you're probably going to win more times than not.
That's a good point. And you got them, the Everett Silvertips, coming off a game last night in Brandon. You've got bus legs, if that's even still a thing. Everybody's in really good shape nowadays, so I don't even know. And there's Wi-Fi on the bus, and you got your cell phone, and probably a really good sleeping bag and a neck pillow. So maybe that doesn't exist anymore. But I think early in the season, on these teams, on these long road trips, you do have to take advantage. So Dante, when we started the show today, and then we'll let you get, because I know you got a busy night and you got some work to do here. So our question at SportsCage.com, in your opinion, the best hockey movie ever made. And here are your choices. Where are my choices at? Let's see. Where are we? Dave, why can't... Oh, here we are.
Youngblood,
So
Slapshot, Miracle, Mighty Ducks, or Mystery Alaska?
Mighty Ducks.
Wow, that's
Without hesitation, Mighty Ducks.
Best hockey movie ever,
Whoa.
without a doubt. Yes.
Okay, but
Nothing
explain.
better.
You got to expound on that answer.
Yeah. Mighty
So
Ducks
is it
the first hockey movie that I ever watched, and I just remember watching number 1, and as a kid, it actually made me kind of want to play the sport. I think that's maybe what got me interested in the game.
Wow. So when you see the pictures now of the cast reunited, do you like, oh boy?
I think the early movies are better than the ones that they've produced more recently.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge movie guy. I think if you'd asked me my favorite baseball movies, I would have had more options, although I think I still would have stuck with Moneyball. But
Moneyball's the best.
Yeah.
So good. So good. Now, here's the thing, Dante, being a little older than you, when the Mighty Ducks came out, Emilio Estevez, who was super popular because he was part of the Brat Pack, like he was riding high. This was almost like a at the time, a step down in the Emilio Estevez kind of like trajectory of like, he's the best actor we've ever seen. He's generational talent. He is the next Jack Nicholson. So it didn't play that way. And all right, it's Mighty Ducks. All right, so 6:30 pregame show, 6:20 CKRM. It's Regina Pats hockey for Bennett Dunlop Ford. 7 o'clock play-by-play. It's just one of 4 games, 4 other games in the Western Hockey League tonight. You got the Red Deer Rebels taking on the Medicine Hat Tigers, the Spokane Chiefs at the Prince Albert Raiders, the Calgary Hitmen at the Swift Current Broncos, and the Portland Winterhawks at the Prince George Cougars. And don't forget, it is a busy weekend for the Pats as well. Friday, they're going to be in Swift Current, and then at home on Sunday to the Spokane Chiefs. And if you're planning on taking the family to the game, the new weekend start times will be 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoons, and that means the pregame show on 620 CKRM will start at 1:30. Time to take a break, and when we come back, we got to check in. It's almost time for some Friday Night Lights action with some high school football. We'll get to that in just a bit on the home of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, 620 CKRM. The show today is brought to you by the Rider Foundation 50-50. This week, the Riders are taking on the Lions with a home playoff game on the line Saturday at Mosaic, and the Rider 50-50, another great early bird prize. A Viva Las Vegas getaway. Earlier in the show, we showed you the video, and it's on the SportsCage socials. They imploded the Tropicana Hotel Resort and Casino yesterday to make way for what's going to be the baseball stadium for the Las Vegas A's. Are they changing the name from the A's, Dave? Is it still going to be A's? Or going to be something different?
They might. I don't know. I wouldn't doubt that they stay the Athletics, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, okay.
They may have a more glitzy Vegas name, right?
So prize includes flights, 3 nights at the Vidara Hotel, and limo transfers. And if you've ever been to the Vegas airport recently in the age of Uber, when you see that lineup for rideshare, oh my God, it's nuts. And when we were there, we tell you, if you want to rent a car, you got to take a bus. It's to a separate terminal over on Warm Springs Road. But it's a 15, 20-minute ride with traffic. So it's a bet. So if you have a limo guy standing there with your name, McFly, which is a fake name, to be like limo, and then there you go. So, or you could take $3,600 cash. Forget, you keep your money. I want to go to Vegas. Because it's fun, and if you've never been in the Vidara, which is next door to the Cosmo, it's a beautiful hotel. Like, it's a high end. And if we ask the question, if you've ever stayed at the Trop was like near the end. It's like Harrah's, it's like the like Bally's, which is now the Horseshoe, and the Flamingo. It was a lower end, but the Vidara is high end. I told you that's where I met a story. That's where I met Durant. We were at the Cosmo. We were at the Cosmo at the same time. We were not together. We were there separately, but I remember being in there seeing Eric Church, and I'm like, wonder what a room goes for here. Anyways, if you want to buy a ticket, tomorrow at 5 is the deadline, riders5050.ca. Dave, as you were a junior football player, as I wasn't, we're kind of in borrowed time now as we're getting closer to mid-October, where we've had a really good fall, and we haven't had that one crazy intermittent snowstorm in September or October, where I always felt bad for anybody that played high school sports to be like, sucks to be you out practicing in the snow today. So we've got our fingers crossed. That's not going to happen. There's some Friday Night Lights Thursday action tomorrow for Regina Motor Products. You've got Clavette at Davidson in 6-man. You've got Assiniboia at Watrous, Southey at Wynyard, and Esther Hazy is at Yorkton Sacred Heart. That's 9-man tomorrow. And then you've got some Regina High School football, one game tomorrow. The F.W. Johnson Wildcats, they're 5-0, by the way, nice. Taking on the Miller Marauders. Balfour Bears taking on Martin Luther Kings at 5:15 and Mosaic. Yeah, Johnson Wildcats are 5-0 and the Miller Marauders are 4-0, so they are tops in Regina minor football. South Rural League, Moose Jaw Peacock is at Balgony. That'll be tomorrow night at Leibel Field at 7 o'clock. Now, if there's a game that's coming up this weekend that we haven't mentioned yet for Friday Night Lights, hi@sportscage.com. Send us an email Friday afternoon, 4:30. Barney, make a big deal about it. Did you see yesterday where Troy Aikman posted that his daughters, who are early 20s, told their dad, who was doing the Kansas City Chief game last night, not to say anything stupid about Taylor Swift and not to get the Swifties after him?
Wise words.
Are we? I know, but Dave, I get it when it was new, but it's not new. Are we getting a little sick of always the reaction shots to the Taylor Swift in the booth at the Chiefs home game? Is it reaching the point of enough already?
No, absolutely not. They're growing the game. They're going to keep showing it over and over and over again. And hey, there's people in my house that are wanting to see those shots, and all the time that they do, that keeps us engaged in watching the show. So more football for Dave is better.
Here's the thing, and I know a lot of people don't want it, Dave, because we talked about this a few weeks ago on the show, that the Kansas City Chiefs are winning so much now, and they've won a couple of Super Bowls. They are becoming kind of like the Dark Knight or the bad guy, where everyone chooses, but they're a good football team. They're 5-0. They find a way without running backs, without wide receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster had not an awesome year last year with the New England Patriots, and he's on fire with the Kansas City Chiefs. You can plug and play, it seems, in Andy Reid's offense, and you get guys that just produce. They're 5-0, and what do you think is going to slow down the Chiefs this year? But now Barney said a Patrick Mahomes injury.
Yes, or themselves. If they come out and they don't perform, right? And sometimes complacency can creep in when good things are happening, right? And I think that's what's going to stop the Chiefs. Injury or complacency. Because I don't know. They just keep finding ways to win.
But after watching the Buffalo game on the weekend, do you think the Buffalo Bills, if that's their main competition, do you think the Buffalo Bills have what it takes this year to beat them in the playoffs when it matters most?
No, I don't. I just there's some gaps and holes in their quarterback health is a concern now with Josh Allen. So I've not liked the Buffalo Bills for a long time, so there is some bias as well in that analysis. So you'll have to bear with me.
Okay. So what are we looking at? The 5-0 club is Kansas City. Minnesota, Arash Madani's Minnesota Vikings. He'll be on tomorrow, probably to gloat about them. They're on a bye week. And kudos to them for, you stack enough wins early in the season, you're probably going to get yourself into, you get 9 wins, you're probably going to be in a playoff situation somehow, some way.
Yep.
Even if that's a wild card. And the Seattle Seahawks, did you see the end of the game against the Giants when they were lining up to kick that field goal? And then they block the kick and go down for the win. I'm like, how is Seattle and Geno Smith 5-0? Now, there's a team I just don't care to. They just do nothing. I've been to that stadium. It's super cool. It's super loud. The 12th man, it's awesome, but there's just something about Seattle Seahawk football that just doesn't compute or connect.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
There's only one team with Taylor Swift support, though. Come on, guys.
Attaboy, Curtis. Way to weigh in.
Right up in the booth.
If you're watching SportsCage.com, it's Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's mom. Okay, but here's the thing. Now, this is the part that's bothering me because it's woke. It's the world we live in. Because Brittany Mahomes came out and supported Donald Trump or liked a few Instagram posts like Harrison Butker and Donald Trump and all of that, they won't show her on TV anymore. They actually don't even sit in the same booth anymore. Because remember last year it was always Mahomes and her together side by side cheering, but because of political aspirations or not, or for whatever the skin in the game is, no, Taylor is by herself. Like if you're Patrick Mahomes and you're the franchise quarterback, like I'm sure he doesn't want to get involved to be like, no, my wife's allowed to sit by her in that same box. And you can put her on TV because they're married. And here's the thing. Someone was already, and it's already out there, because Taylor Swift dates a lot of guys. It doesn't necessarily always end well. And it's coming. Is it going to be, they walk down the aisle? Some of the games, Sunday matchups of interest, the Commanders at the Ravens. Hey, listen, the Washington Commanders, I think, are, with Jaden Daniels at quarterback, quietly surprising a lot of people how good they are. And is Dan Quinn been a very good head coach, trapped as a defensive coordinator for a long, long time? Kind of looks that way. Because the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, this will be a test, because the Ravens are kind of, because Lamar Jackson's still healthy. He's scrappy enough, and he's not hurt yet. So that's why they're playing well. So to me, that could almost be the game of the weekend.
It's not the Cowboys, but it'll be close.
Just wait, I'm getting to that. The Saints and the Bucks, but I wrote that down, but then I read that Derek Carr is out with that oblique injury, and he's going to be out for a long time. And I don't know who the Saints' backup quarterback is, but without Derek Carr, I don't think the Saints have a chance.
They're not the same.
And speaking of the Dallas Cowboys, they're taking on the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that's going to be a paddling, in the words of The Simpsons. It's not going to be nice for Dallas.
You think?
Oh, I
see, but
don't
here's
have a lot
to
of
me
confidence in Dallas.
Okay, so I don't either, but as far as the Detroit Lions go, they don't have a track record yet because they still lose games that they should win. And this is a game. And did you see on social media today that Dak Prescott is getting his house torn down because he's building a mansion? Like they were running a backhoe and stuff and shooting video of him. And I'm like,
so that's why it was off last week. He was trying to move. I get it. Totally.
Having been through a move yourself, it totally throws your life off, right? Yeah. Oh, and we should mention a little closer to home here. There's some playoff football action this Sunday at Leibel Field. Regina Thunder taking on the Calgary Colts. And tomorrow night, Zach Wedalia is going to be on with Barney on the all-new Sports Cage to talk about that game. Colson, was that you earlier today in our Sports Cage pre-planning meeting, or was that you, Curtis, that said this is almost like should the Hilltops and the Thunder even have to play this weekend? Can we just not give them the week off and let them meet in the PJFC final where we think it's just going to end up?
Yeah, that was me. From the get-go of the season, everyone was saying that this is what it was going to be, right? So, barring some miraculous surprise, we know it's going to be Thunder and Hilltops 2 weekends from now. So,
and I know that the coaches would say all the right things, that we're not going to look past anybody and everybody, and we got to play a good game. But just if history, if the predictor of future behavior is the past, there's a good chance that Edmonton and Calgary don't win against Saskatoon or Regina this weekend, and it could be wasted. In this economy, you're going to drive all this way for that, to see that. So, and here's the thing. It's one thing to beat a team twice in a year, but 3 times in the season, and if the Thunder and the Hilltops do meet again, that will be the 3rd time this year, and the only losses have come against the Saskatoon Hilltops. So what are the 100%. Chances that
100%?
The odds have got to go back in your favor. If you want tickets to the game at Leibel Field, all you need to do is just shoot us a text. Capital Ford Lincoln text line, 306-936-6262. Colson will round up your name and contact you and get in touch with some tickets. And thanks to those guys for helping out our Sports Cage fans, taking a little football. Should be some decent weather this weekend at Leibel Field. Time for another break here on the all-new Sports Cage. When we come back, although the NHL kicked off its regular season in Europe last week, that really didn't count. They kind of got things going last night, but tonight there are 6 Canadian NHL teams in action. We'll run those down next. It's the Sports Cage on 620 CKRM. Our poll question today, what is the best hockey movie of all time? Dave, some of these answers from our guests today have shocked me. I would have thought, there is no way in the world that I would have thought that The Mighty Ducks is leading what we're doing here as far as best hockey movie of all time, given some of the choices you have to choose from. Slapshot, Miracle, Mighty Ducks, Mystery Alaska, and Youngblood. And I IMDb'd Youngblood just to see if I was leaving out anybody famous from the movie. Well, no. So Rob Lowe.
Oh.
Rob Lowe plays Dean Youngblood. The star, the central character.
Yeah.
Patrick Swayze plays Derek Sutton, the cagey vet who shows him the way. And the coach's daughter, Cynthia Gibb, Jesse Chadwick. I don't know if we ever saw her in anything after that.
The name sounds familiar, though.
Yeah. If you want to vote, go to sportscage.com. I'm saying Slapshot. You don't get any better. It's a classic. It stands the test of time. I watched it the other day. It was on Sunday. Well, it's probably on all the time, just depending on what cable package you have. But it was on Sunday, and yeah.
But did you get the TV version or did you get the movie version? Because there's 2 different versions that are entirely different.
No, for whatever, this was uncut. It was
Okay.
it was the real.
Fair enough.
The real one. I love it. He's banging his head on the boards. I'm going to end up at the Chrysler plant. I'm going to end up at that. And it's funny. And they're doing the fashion show from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan, yeah.
like you can't. It's classic. I'm voting for that twice. I know that it's election time and you're not allowed to cast 2 ballots. That's illegal in a lot of places. But I'm voting for Slapshot twice. Do you get better? Oh, do we have it handy? So the other, on what was it, back on Monday, Barney was interviewing Mark Mueller, offensive coordinator of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and they were talking about Reg Dunlop and his leather jacket. Yeah. And so Colson or Curtis, if you can put it up.
I'll get it to Curtis.
Yeah, I don't know if Mueller's watching, but
See, we got to be careful because the way the offense for the Riders works is this could become a shirt. Because I talked to Mark after the conversation because it really makes a lot of sense, right? Because everybody in Rider Nation is going to give Mark Mueller some tips on how to build a better offense, just like Reg Dunlop in the movie Slapshot got tips from everyone in Charleston how to make the power play better, right? So we had a chuckle because there's some similarities there, and he remembers his dad watching the movie with him back in the day when he was a young guy. And
it's so funny, like parenting, because you had said you're watching it with your kids. Where back when we were growing up, you would watch.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the beauty of Photoshop. When we get it, we'll put it up, and if we can get it onto Mueller. All right. So, speaking of hockey, there's 5 games in the NHL tonight. Leafs and Canadians. They've already faced off. Canadians fans, I know are we still in that rebuild? But things are looking good so far. We're early in the first period. Cole Caulfield has scored a power play goal. You're up 1-0 on the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Thanks to a Max Domi ridiculous penalty. I don't know what he was doing, but yeah.
Can we see who's playing goal for the Leafs? Is it Joseph Wall? Is that who they're resting there?
It must be Wall. I think it might be, yeah.
Still to come tonight, Rangers and Penguins. Do you know it's Sidney Crosby's 20th season?
That's insane, isn't it?
Exactly. So has that flown by? When I saw that earlier today, I'm like, really? Has that flown by? Or no, it's 20 years.
It's 15 years since he scored the golden goal, almost.
Really?
Think of that one. 20.
Wow.
Come this winter, 2025. That was 15 years ago in 2010 in Vancouver that he scored the golden goal for Canada.
And remember, of course, he comes in, hot start, all that, but then he got into the injury and the concussion trouble. And then for whatever he did and whatever advice he got and how he changed his body type and how he played the game, because knock on wood, he's played pretty much injury free for a long time. And that durability because you remember when he used to, when the NHL was just different and he used to take a beating and you're just like, man, I don't know if this guy's ever going to live up to the potential. See, and I'm glad they got a chance to win their Stanley Cups. Because it's a shame if somebody that talented didn't get a chance to win. I don't know if they're going to win one again, but at least they got their chance and they came through and they made good on that promise of winning.
Here's a
the Stanley
discussion
Cup.
point that might be for another day. And obviously, the debate may live on forever as far as which goal is bigger in Canadian hockey history, Paul Henderson in 72 or Sidney Crosby in 2010, and I'm sure the text line is going to blow up with those two. So if you say that they're a saw-off, right, you take those two out of the equation, which is the next biggest goal?
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. If you're watching at sportscage.com, or if not, go back when this gets posted on YouTube.
Wow.
And there is the beauty of Photoshop. So there's Mark Mueller pasted on Reg Dunlop's body. So there's Mueller's head on Reg Dunlop's body wearing that beautiful tan brown leather jacket with the matching lighter tan brown shirt. Wow. That, right, my friends, that is the internet. Good job, Colson Schultz. Yeah. Nice.
That is going to be a talking point.
What's a more important goal? I think it's really easy, depending on your age and your generation. Paul Henderson was before me, Sidney Crosby I was right there watching it. I was minute by minute. You're screaming in your living room. So to me, it's Crosby and the golden goal in the Olympics, just because of the age, because I watched it live. And so I experienced it. The Henderson thing was before my time.
Okay, so what's next? What's the next biggest goal for Team Canada? Would it be Jordan Eberle at the World Juniors in Ottawa when he scored the goal late in the game to send it to overtime?
I'm going to go completely off the map here. Do you want to know a goal that haunts me that I don't even like thinking about? It was back in 1989 when the Broncos scored in overtime to beat the Blades in the Memorial Cup. Being a Blades fan, it was crushing.
That's true.
And we had all sorts of injury problems at goal last year. Like Mike Greenlay was our goalie. Swift Current was so good. And just that, as far as goals go, like some people would say if you were a Flames fan, it's that goal against Tampa Bay that went in that didn't get counted. And then they end up and they go on to lose the Stanley Cup. But that one, the Memorial Cup in '89, I'll never forget that. You're just leaving Sask Place and it's a downer. But Swift Current was a good team. They deserved to win. They won their way in. It wasn't because Sask home, but they just, oh man, it was crazy. Yeah, it was Tim Tisdale that scored that goal. Thanks, Barney.
Pleased to help you out there. I told you the text line's going nuts.
You don't need to find the video footage of that. We don't need that. That's fine. Pretend the computer's broken again. We don't need that.
I'll just quickly answer Rod's question. He texted in earlier at 936-6262 about seeing both running backs used to keep our guys fresh, and if not, why do we risk it? Referring to when we used Sheets and Sanders back in the day. And I completely get that. And talking with the running back situation at Ryder practice today, AJ Ouellette took the brunt of the snaps. He was out there with the first team offense, and I would suggest all signs indicate that he will start. But Raquel Armstead is around. Frankie Hickson is there. The only problem that you have, and I think it's more of a crunch this week, is trying to figure out the ratio. So if you want to bring in another running back that's in all those three instances is an American running back, you have to find a way to start another Canadian somewhere. And right now with Adam Auclair not having practiced this week with a knee injury, he's your starting Canadian linebacker. So you're going to have to do some juggling. So as much as I agree and understand and completely get with what you're saying and having the two backs, Rod, I just don't know that you can do it with the roster construction. And speaking with Corey Mace today, he told point blank, you know what? We're not saving anything for the playoffs. We're not doing anything, even though there's a high likelihood these two teams are going to face each other again this season in BC and Saskatchewan after this week. We're going out for the win, and we have to be playing our best football, and we can't afford to take a step back. And so I don't think that they're playing it safe with anyone this week. If you're available to go, I think you go.
Maybe Mark Mueller, now that he is the reincarnated Reg Dunlop, goes with a three-headed monster with a three-person backfield.
You never know.
Getting that going. All right. So speaking of the Saskatchewan Roughriders in practice, we had a chance to talk with Trevor Harris. We're going to take a break and come back. Stand by, Rider Nation. Your quarterback, who the more he talks, and ever since he's come back from injury, how can you not like this guy and everything that he does and all of the positivity and where he has this team headed right now? We're going to take a break here on the all-new Sports Cage and come back. And the quarterback of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Trevor Harris, will be on the radio. Stand by. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are back home on Saturday in the Plaza of Honor game to play the BC Lions. A home playoff game is on the line. I'm already starting to feel a little nervous. A little twinge in there. A home playoff game. Holy smokes. Because during the 2-month losing streak, if you would have said, we're going to have a chance at a home playoff game, I don't know if I would have believed you. The Croft Electric Countdown to Kickoff with Justin Duncan, West Kate starts at 2 o'clock on Saturday. Rider Nation pregame show with Dave Thomas and Luke Mullender will go at 4, and you can watch our Rider Radio live stream on Saturday by going to sportscage.com. But let's go one better. Let's have you at the game, watching Darian and Roy brought onto the field at halftime and being honored. The Plaza of Honor. If you want a free pair of tickets, text the word RIDERS with an S to 306-936-6262. That's the Capital Ford Lincoln text line for your chance to win. All right. Quarterback Trevor Harris, ever since he's come back from injury, he's been on a heater, and he has been outstanding. You can only imagine if we had him for every game this season. But nonetheless, we'll take what we can get. And Dave Thomas had a chance to catch up with Trevor earlier today at practice.
Trevor, you've been down the road to the postseason before. How do you make sure that this team continues to progress through the remainder of the regular season into a playoff game that you've now clinched?
I don't think that's really even something we have to address. This group is not just satisfied with just making the playoffs. It's not something that we've taken some large exhale and be like, whoo, okay. We won 3 in a row. We haven't done anything. We haven't accomplished anything yet in terms of what our bigger goals were. And so we're just 1 week at a time, just continuing to pound the stone to try and be the best team we can is really the focus we're at right now.
I know the only numbers that you care about are the numbers that are on the scoreboard at the end of the game, but since you've been back, you are number 1 or 2 in most major statistical categories for a quarterback. What's been going right for you?
We have a great system, and Coach Mueller calls it well, and our receivers are great in getting to their spots and catching the football and making stuff happen, and our O-line's protecting well, and I'm just trying to do my 1/12 and do the best I can, and I've always prided myself on being the same person every day, every week, and trying to be as consistent as I can for the team, and I'm just trying to improve myself steadily throughout the season every year, and I feel like I'm starting to see the field well, and but that's a credit to Coach's game plan and just trying to follow through with my part.
Are you happy with the way your offense is performing at this point in the season, heading down the stretch run?
It's more or less just who we're becoming through the process, and the team just wants to become better and better every week. And if we can watch the film and find things to get better at, but not make the same mistake twice, those are the things and teams and reasons why you can climb in the postseason, win games in the postseason, and survive in advance, as they say, and just be there in the last Sunday in November. And so really, that's our focus, is just continual improvement. There's no we've had a meal and we're satisfied. The belly is full alligator or whatever, where we're not going to be aggressive. We're coming at people still.
Trevor, post-game you mentioned that one of the passes you made was to your last resort receiver, and obviously you have to go through a number of progressions to get there. Mm-hmm. Would you suggest that you're playing the sharp as you've ever played mentally right now in your career?
I'm not sure. I think I'd probably leave that up to coaches to decide or whatever, but I do feel that I'm in a good groove in terms of seeing the field and understanding what's going to happen and how things are going to unfold as I see my pre and post snap pictures. And so to me, it's just about making sure I'm moving through my progressions and doing what the coaches kind of teach me to throughout the week in terms of what our game plan is and how we can progress through plays.
And your timing, I know you worked and talked about that extensively. Are you happy with where your timing's at?
Yeah. I think we're starting to really feel the timing in terms of our primaries opening up that are married to my footwork in terms of single hitch, no hitch, big hitch, resets. Resets are timing up with footwork, and that's really when the magic happens, is when they come out of their break and the ball's in the air. And so if we can have that happen and continue to improve in those regards, then it's really tough to play defense against teams and systems like that.
That's our quarterback, Trevor Harris. Yeah, when you start breaking down those numbers, how good he is, since he has been back. Hey, that's going to do it. We're running along here. It's the all-new Sports Cage. If you missed any part of the show, Pat Steinberg from Sportsnet talking about the Flames, Lieutenant Eric from Edmonton Sports Talk talking about the Elks and the Oilers, and Dante Decaria talking about the Regina Pats. You can always catch the podcast, and you can find that at sportscage.com. That's it for today. Barney's back in tomorrow. Thanks for checking it out. See ya.